Hey, my name is Tyler and I have an awesome course for you on n8n to go from the very basics to some more advanced topics and go over all the nodes and ways to create your automations that I think you should know. We have over 2.5 hours of teaching, including quite a few projects for us to build together. It'll also be in my free school community, which will also be in the description below. So let's not waste any more time and let's get started. Okay, so for the first project, what we're gonna build is a scheduled trigger. So every morning at 6 a.m., it's going to go to Hacker News, retrieve the latest posts, and then we're going to have an if statement to make sure that we actually have those posts. The code is going to just get the last or the top 5 based off of points, and then we're going to eventually send that message into our email. And then we'll get sent an email just like this with clickable URLs. And this is really good because not only do we get used to a scheduled trigger, we also use an HTTP request node with an API that doesn't, with a node that doesn't exist for Hacker News in n8n, and we see a code node and then use our Gmail. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and create our new work. All right, so we have a brand new canvas here to work on for our new flow. So the first thing is we need to add the scheduled trigger node, which we actually will add at the end. We're going to put in a manual trigger node for now. Manual trigger node is the best way to test everything. We'll just switch it to a scheduled trigger when we're done. Now, the next thing is I'll have the URL for you for Hacker News, but we need to go ahead and add a new node, and this is going to be HTTP. So search for HTTP. It'll be the request node, and this is a GET request. You don't have to know too much about those, but what we need to do here is put in the URL, which you can copy, but HN for Hacker News. This is how we're going to search for things on the front page. And for this one, I made it simple so we don't have to do really anything else, but there are a lot of options that in the future that you will have to use. So the first thing, what I always do, this is a really good thing to kind of understand, is I'll go over some more like better and advanced testing techniques whenever we get to more advanced workflows. But go ahead and test this out. Just execute the step, and you can see here we get an output. Right, a lot of the stuff you may not need to know. In this instance, the hits is what we really care about. So the hits means that there are 20 different stories that we got from Hacker News. So we can come down here and we can kind of see this is the author. So this is like kind of the author level. That's the value. That's his name. We can kind of come down here. This is the URL. This is the title, the models of European metro stations. And then you can eventually come on down and you'll see like the caption, that's the title, right? But you get all this information that we need from each story. Okay, and then the next thing is we want to make sure that we actually got information from Hacker News. And the best way to do that is an if statement. So after you click the add another node, you can go to flow, then choose the if statement. This is just going to return either true or false. And then over here, and this is a great thing about using n8n, is it kind of gives you a list of the input or the outputs from the previous node. So hits right here, this is an array, and in case you're wondering, you're not really sure if it's an array, the little icon beside the hits, it looks like a dot, 3 dots, and then like lines beside them. If we come in here in this drop down, so we have the list, this is the same symbol right here on the screen, the array. So what we want to do is the length is greater than 0. Okay, so now let's test this out, execute the step, and see it's either going to give us a true branch or a false branch. So it's going to pass all this data through in the true branch. Okay, great. So we know that that is true. If it's false, we don't really have to do anything. It's going to be scheduled. But so now what we need to do is we're going to use a code node. There's a lot of information here, so we just want to extract some of that. So go ahead, go to the next one. We're going to use a code node. And in case you're wondering, you could definitely use a few other nodes to kind of handle this, right? But I want to introduce you to the code node because this is, you don't actually have to, you can use ChatGPT or Claude to actually get you the answer for this. Now, I already have the code for this, but I just want to show you. So all you have to do is, this is how I do it. So go to JSON, going to go to copy. You can just copy the output. Okay, so I opened up ChatGPT, and now what I want to do is I want it to give me the code for this node, essentially. Okay, so what I've done is I just opened up ChatGPT, basically said that I need a JavaScript code for this n8n node, extracting the top 5 Hacker News, and then formatting it into HTML for an email and the subject for top 5 Hacker News and the date. So I'm just going to send this, and then it shouldn't take too long, and it should be able to give me the code that's going to output the HTML
and give me the subject. And here it says it gave me a drop-in n8n code node in JavaScript. I'm just going to copy this. Right, we can go through this, but really what I care about is at the end, like here's the HTML that's going to return the subject top 5 in HTML. I didn't ask you to give me the top 5, but that's okay. So we're going to go back to n8n, open up this code node. We're going to paste it in, and we're just going to test it. Yep, so let's just go ahead and test this now. Hopefully this worked. Okay, so it gave me the subject, and it gave me an HTML. Perfect. Now I don't know what it looks like yet, but we're about to test that out. So next thing we need to do, the last thing we need to do is add the email step. So go ahead and go to the next node, type in Gmail, open up Gmail, and then we want to, you can just start typing in send because it has a lot of information about that. So what you need to do here, because we're using the cloud hosted version, all you need to do is, if you don't have a credential yet for Gmail, just open this up. You'll go to new credential, and you just sign in with your Google account. That's it. It's very simple when you're using a cloud hosted server. Okay. So then once you've done that, now this can be any email, right? So this will be my email that I use for YouTube, right? So I'm going to just paste that in. Now the subject, I'm just going to drop in right here. And you can kind of click the brackets there because it's an array. Then we're going to drop in the HTML here as the message. Well, let's just go ahead and send this and see what it looks like. Should only take a second to send it. So okay, so it's in my inbox. So let's go over to my email and check it out. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to refresh this. Okay, here we go. And here is, I mean, this looks pretty good, right? So again, that's why the code node is amazing now, especially now over just the months. Like it probably wouldn't have been able to do that in one shot. I mean, it wasn't really a hard one, right? But you don't have to know how to code. It can do that for you. I use ChatGPT 5. You can use Claude Code, which I really love. You know, Cursor, whatever you have, whatever you want to use, it doesn't matter. It's going to do well, and it did that all for me, all for us, without having to use other nodes to do all the manipulating for us. So now you have a fully functional AP using a Hacker News API, which you just learned, and then now it's sending an email. It's going to do that every morning. Well, it's about to. So typically what I do is I need to add the trigger node. So I'm just going to then add a node. You can type in scheduled or schedule. And then over here in the days, I want to do every day at 6 a.m. So by the time like I'm really ready to look at it, or you can do 5:30 or something like that, whatever you choose, right? So you can come in here, paste that, and then you can like detach the manual node. You can just keep it here sometimes if you just want to test, or you can just recreate it, right? So I'm just going to do this, and then when I save it, you can also change the title. So email digest, hacker news, whatever you want to call it. Press enter. So now we have the title and it saved it. And then to really just get this working, actually working every day at 6 a.m., you just have to activate it. So up here, just click the button to activate, and you are good to go. That's it. We are set and ready now. And so every morning at 6 a.m., I'm going to get the top 5 stories from Hacker News, and I just have to go there if I want to look at them. Okay, guys, great job with that. I'll have all the resources. I'll tell you how to get all the resources for this, but you have done amazing. So now we're going to go ahead into the next section. Okay, great job with that project. I knew you could do it. We have quite a bit more to go. So the next section, this is going to be now part 3 of this course. This is about logic nodes. And so some of the most basic nodes you're going to use that are also, you can also call them flow nodes, is branching, merging, and looping. Okay, these are basic actions that you're going to take throughout your automations. So we have the if node. This is basically a true or false. So whatever you bring in, you can determine whether based on an expression, is this true or is this false? Is this above a certain value or not? And then they can branch out into separate flows within your automation. Then there's the switch node. This we're going to look at, but you can have values come in and then have it determine based on the values, and you can have several different branches from that. And then you can have the merge node, which can merge other nodes together. And then we have split in batches, and this is actually more important than what I think people really understand. So basically, if you have about 1,000, a low number, 1,000 values coming in, but you have something that processes them, and it could take a while to process. You don't want to process all 1,000 at once. You want to split them maybe 50 at a time, 100 at a time, based on whatever you're doing. So kind of how the kind of process goes is you're going to route some values, they're going to perform some logic or some work, and then you can recombine them, and then we have something called throttle. And throttle just means is like rate limiting, like when you split things, you don't want to have everything out together. So you want to route with an if or switch node, then you can work on those separate branches that it creates. You can merge them, you can merge those nodes, merge those branches back together, and then once you do that, we can split everything. Again, that depends on what you're doing, but you can split them so that they're being processed, whether it's through a request, you're updating a database. You don't want to process everything at once because you could run into request timeouts. That is definitely an issue. So let's go ahead and look at an example. Okay, so here I have an example of kind of everything that I said. Okay, so we have the manual trigger node. All this code does, it's just going to return an array of items. Okay, basically they have an ID, a title, and then a priority. The priority is either low, normal, or high. So this is the first thing. We have a switch statement. So we have a switch node. So here we're bringing in, let's go ahead and run this up to this point. So here, the switch statement is we bring all 12 items in, we're checking on the priority from here, and then if it's equal to high, then the output branch is going to be named high. The same thing, if we bring in the priority here, if it's equal to normal, we name that normal, and the same thing for low. So what this is saying is we have 3 high priority items, 5 normal, and 4 low. Okay, now that we have that, we could do different things based on that information. So here I just have 3 set fields. So this means that, for instance, the service agreement, I want to say that now we have 4 hours if they are high priority, right? So here, these are all the high priorities. I suggest renaming the output so you understand what that means. So for the high priority ones, this means that SLA is 4. So I'm just adding that. And I want to include other items. So if I execute the step, I now have all my inputs, plus I added a field called SLA over here. And I did the same thing for these fields. I just made the SLA return, have the agreement signed within 24 hours. And then if they are low priority, have it just signed within 72 hours. Okay, so then you see I have merge nodes. So let me just go and run this also. Actually, let's just run this merge node. Okay, so what does this merge node do? All right, so we have 5 output items that are of normal priority, 4 of low priority, and I'm merging them back together. So in the merge node, you could actually merge together up to 10 different outputs from previous nodes. So I could have 10 different 10 different set nodes or other nodes, and I could combine them all together now into one output. So you can see here, let's go to JSON. Yeah, so edit fields 1, that had 5 items. Edit fields 2, that had 4 items. We combine them together, and now we have a total of 9 items. So we just put all of those properties back into one. And then I'm going to go and execute this one. And so this, the high priority, there were 3 of them. We add the SLA to it. Now we're going to merge everything from normal and low that was put into one node, and then merge that with all the high ones. So now we again have a total of 12 items that we started with, but we added the SLA to each of them. Okay, and then we have this split in batches. So let's say that we had something that took a lot of time to process everything. We had to do like a lot of work. Well, and for the loop over, you're going to basically you're going to search for split in batches. It'll call loop over items, then in parentheses split in batches. So whenever we call this, then you can determine the batch or the number of items that you want processed at a time. So here we have 12, so then we have a batch size of 5. And I just have a wait that waits 5 seconds, a wait node. So just to kind of, simulate what's happening. So here it's going to wait 5 seconds, it's going to process. So it says process 5 items. It's going to wait again. Actually, let's just execute this whole workflow so you can see it all working in action. So it's going to come here. It's going to process 5 items, wait 5 seconds, then loop over again for the next 5 items. You can see it just increased, this check mark increased to 2. That means now it's the second iteration, and now it's the third iteration. So each time they're waiting 5 items, and then the done, that means that we're going to have 12 items in the output. So this is a great way this is a good exercise to understand how these basic logic nodes work, and you should really try to understand those. Okay, so now in the next part, I really wanted to just want you to understand all the logic things, because now the next one, which arguably could be the most important part of this course is understanding APIs and the HTTP node within n8n. So I'm going to go over it. So we're going to go through a crash course of APIs and HTTP, and then we're going to have a project that combines everything that we are learning together. So first off, what is an API? Well, if you really want to know, an API stands for Application Programming Interface. Basically, this allows different applications to talk with each other over a protocol. So you could think of it as a waiter taking your order, so that's the request, and then whenever they bring your food, that is the response. So the waiter is kind of like the middleman that makes communication possible between us who are requesting food and then the kitchen who's making the food, and the waiter gives us back the food. Okay, so the next thing you should know, this is the actual protocol. So this is HTTP. So what is that? Well, it stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It's the foundational language used by the web for communication. Okay, so just understand HTTP is the protocol used for these requests and responses to make everything work. So they go by what's called a client server model. So this is defined how the clients, so if you think about like when you go to Google, we want to request Google's webpage. Well, there's a server that's going to send us back everything so that we can see Google's website and then we can start searching. And so this defines how clients request data from servers, and it's just in a certain structure, which is like a protocol. In the request response, okay, so this is just how the HTTP operates on a simple request response protocol between the client and the server. The two most common methods you're going to use, or that you're going to use with n8n, are get and post. Okay, so typically with get, you're just retrieving data. So this is great for getting profiles. So if you're doing some scraping, right? The scraping is everywhere. When you're scraping, you're typically using get request to retrieve information, and then post is the other one that's going to be the most common one you use. This is when you're sending data. You could use this to send data to create new resources, right? So for instance, form submissions, user registration, or just creating new records in a database state. There are others, like these aren't the only ones, but put, delete, and patch. They handle other operations like updating and deletion, but you typically won't have to worry about those. So here are some examples, right? So these actually work. So the example get request, so this URL is a randomuser.me. This is actually going to get the top 5 results in the US, and these are just random users. So the response is really a huge JSON file of information. So the first one is Mrs. Kelly Williamson. So we get the title first name, last name, their gender, but there is a lot of information, and all we're doing is retrieving data with the get request, and then we can do something with that information. Now, in an example post request is that we are going to call this API/users, and they have what's called a body. So this body means that this is data that we're going to send to this URL, and that API will then know to do something with that. In this case, it will create this user in that website for their database. So you're going to use the JSON body for the post request, and then with the get request, you're typically just retrieving information. So this brings us to one of the most important nodes that I think you're going to learn with n8n is the HTTP node. So you're going to have the URL. So this is where you're going to send or retrieve information from, the query. So you can have filters like we had previously. We retrieved the top 5 users from the US. Then you can have headers. This is typically where you could have you would have API keys, or they call bearer tokens, just like information that the server is looking for, so they can actually give you information. And then the body. This is what you send on the post request. Okay, this is information. Say, hey, I want to save this user. Here's all the information, and you'll send that, and then it will save it into some database probably. Okay, so I have 2 examples here. So again, manual trigger node is great for testing. Then I have a simple get request. This is just going to this is a public API that just retrieves national holidays. Okay, so all I did was, this is the URL. So the method here, right? So you're going to use get. We're retrieving information, so just the URL. We don't have to have any API keys or anything. So if I execute this step, this is going to output 16 different public holidays in the US and for 2025. And so this has some information like the date, the local name, the country code, and some other information for each of these holidays. Okay, so then what I could do, I could combine this with a limit node. And then I can just output these 3. So here's Lincoln's birthday, was on February 12th, New Year's, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, etc. So the important thing here is that this is a sample GET request. We're just retrieving information. Now a POST request, on the other hand, this is actually this is a legit website where you can create to-dos and retrieve them. So this is a post request. This is the URL, right? But here we have the send body checked. So, well, or we have it turned on, I guess. And so what I'm doing is I'm sending the title for it to do. It's not completed yet, and this is probably connected to the user with the user ID of 1. Okay, so now if I execute this step, you see it returns. Basically what's returning is that, okay, this was successful. We probably saved it in some database. So it returned us the title. It's not completed, the user ID, and then this is the auto-generated ID after it created this to-do. So this means that this is probably the 201st to-do that was created for maybe for this user, or just it could be just overall. Okay, so it depends on what it sends back to you, but this is typically something that you will get back, and it kind of confirm that what you asked it to do, it did. Okay, so great job with everything so far. That was a little bit to digest. So this is now going to lead us into our second project, which is going to be dealing with a form into Airtable. There will also be other nodes, and we're going to be using the things that we have learned. But I'm also really going to show you something new with Airtable that is really powerful. But we're going to combine things we learned and now have this project. And this is what it's going to look like. Okay, so we're going to execute this flow. We're going to fill out this form. I'm going to put in my email address. And then we're going to put in some notes. I want to make money now. The source is web, and I'll just say tyler.com is the domain. So once we submit this, okay, it's been submitted, and it's already done. So it went through some nodes that we're going to go over, created a record in Airtable that we have to create a table for, and then we sent the message in Slack. And this is what the message looked like. It basically tells us, hey, we got a new lead. His name is Tyler, and this is where he came from, and this is his email. And then we have it saved here in Airtable. And what's nice about this is that it also generates interfaces for us so we can see when, let's see, I was on the 17th, it's probably because of UTC, but we have all the submissions, we have the submit form, like how they came in, but it's able to create all these interfaces for us from this data. So let's go ahead and figure out how I did this, and let's do this together now. Okay, so the first thing is we're going to add the first step, and this is actually going to be a form. So you just type in n8n form, and this will pop up a node. You may or may not have used this before. So this is just to kind of show you things. So we're going to use this. The trigger is on a new form event. So here, basically, we are just going to create our form. So the title can be lead submission. The form description, you can add something here if you want, but the form elements are what we need. So the first one is going to be name. You can have these element types here. So this is just going to be text. You can have a placeholder, and you can also tell it whether it's required or not. So we're going to add another form element. This is going to be email. This actually has a dedicated field called email, and this is also going to be required. We're also going to have another one called source. This is just kind of where they are submitting from. That does not have to be required. We also want the company name. So this is going to be company. You can require this if you would like to. I'm going to actually click require just because you have to fill this out. And then some notes. This does not have to be required, and that should do it. Okay, so what we're going to do now, so basically this is going to submit a form. So let's go ahead and test this out. So we're going to execute the workflow. That's all you have to do. And we're going to type in some information. I'll just type in basically the same thing that it already typed in because we made this an email, an actual email field, it kind of does some validation already for us. So I can put Twitter this time, abc.com, and then this is how we will make money in 2025. So when I hit submit, okay, great. So now we're going to go on to the next node. Even though we already have a check for the email validation, we want to make sure that they actually put something in the email. Because even though it's required, we just want to make sure that it's valid ourselves. So we can put the email in here, and we just want to make sure that there's going to be one. So in this if statement, right, that we talked about, we didn't necessarily talk about that there's several different types of values that it can take to check something on. So for instance, for string, you can just check if that string even exists. If it's equal to, does it start with a certain value? But this time we're gonna use matches regex. So it has to be a specific regular expression. So meaning that it has to have the @ symbol. There has to be some number of letters before that. It has to be a .com. So it has to be some sort of dot something at the end. So we're gonna click matches regex. And then we're just going to put this in, and okay, you don't necessarily have to know what this means, but the pluses are like at least some number of characters. So we're just going to click execute step, and what this basically means that this is a valid email, just because it's in the true branch. Okay, so now what's the next thing we want to do? Well, we want to go ahead and set certain fields, right? So I'm going to show you what I mean by that, because some of these are optional, right? Some of them might not exist. So we just want to make sure that they're being passed as an empty string if there's nothing there. For instance, notes, we don't have to put something. So we want to by default add something in case, just so that it gets saved properly in the database. Okay, so here you can just start kind of dragging and dropping the source. And here you could also rename these too. You can rename these fields if you would like. You can modify them as well. So company, and then I'm going to pass in notes. We can pass some into that. We don't need form mode. So what you can do here, so for instance, source is also an optional one. You can add this double, those are called pipelines. So you can add 2 pipelines, and then, just an empty string. In case there's nothing, we just want to make sure that we're passing something. And the same thing for company. Oh, actually, the company we made had to be there. It's actually the notes. No notes were given. Okay, you can put something like that. Okay, so now we're going to execute this step. Okay, great. We're doing good so far. Okay, so now that we have that done, the next thing is we are going to make sure that we can actually ping that email, right? There's no point on having a lead, or at least for now, there's no point in having a lead if we can't email them anything, right? So there happens to be a HTTP GET request that can do that for us. So we're going to click a new node. We're going to type in HTTP for the request node. So this is a GET request, and I'll have this. You can just basically copy this in. But this is called disposable.debounce.io, and this is a GET request. So we don't have any body. We don't need any API keys, but we do need to send something as part of as a parameter. So when we're querying this data, so it means basically when we retrieve this data, we need to make sure that we're sending it something to check on, and we wanted to check on the email. So you turn this on, the send query parameters. The name of the query will be email, and the value is just going to be the email that we had sent through. So just because it's a valid email, meaning like it looks good, that doesn't mean that we can actually send anything to it. You might get a bounce back. Okay, so this is where we want to make sure. And this is kind of weird. So when I go to execute the step now, disposable false, that means that it is valid. Okay, you might think that is true, but when it says it's not disposable, that means that it is a valid email. Okay, so what we wanted then, let me scroll in a little bit. So now what we need to do is we need to check with another if statement. I told you this would be a common one that we would use. So we want to say if that is equal to false, just execute step. Okay, that is true. That means we kind of did the check on the form. These kind of all been checks and forms, and now we want to go ahead and save. We can go and save this in the Airtable, and then we can send a notification in Slack to our team that, hey, we got a new lead, and then we can follow up on that some other way. So now we need to go ahead and make our table in Airtable, and it's really amazing. So I'm going to start over with that, and I'll just show you all you need to do and how easy it really is. Okay, so this is Airtable. You're going to go to airtable.com, just give you a very brief synopsis of what this is. It's an online database, and they've really upgraded it just within the last few months. It now has something called Airtable Omni, which instead of us having to manually create all the tables, we can do it with a prompt, and it kind of just gives us everything. Okay, so here's how it's going to work. You first have to create an account. You can do this for free. You can sign in. I know that it says I have a team plan here, but what I'm going to be, the database I'm going to be creating now is part of the free plan, would be what you would see on the free plan. So now we can just go ahead and create our own workspace first. So you're going to come over here on workspaces. There's a plus button, or there might be a big plus button in the middle if you don't have one yet. So we can call this n8n lead. n8n leads. Okay, this is just a workspace. You can call it whatever you want, right? Okay, so we won't have any databases yet, so we need to create that. They call them apps in the workspace. It's really a database. Now you have two options. You can choose build an app with Omni or build an app on your own. We want to choose with Omni. So we're going to take we're going to take advantage of AI. And basically, that's what this is. It's basically using AI to create what we want, and it's going to do more for us. Okay, so you'll have this, but you can just copy and paste this in. I want to create a table called lead submission with these columns: name, email, source, notes, company, and submitted ad. Then you just say build it, and we're just going to watch it do its thing. Okay, so it's going to get ready to create it. So it's going to create, it's going to be a little confusing. This has been updated a little bit, but you can see it's already created the columns for me. It's going to add a little bit more that you can get rid of, and it also fills in with some dummy data for us. So it's going to, these are formulas, right, based off of like the submission date. So it's going to create a submission month. It's going to try and figure out the email domain from this. So right now what it's doing is creating interfaces. Let's go back to the data. So it uses AI now. When you fill in the notes summary, this is an AI agent. Okay, we'll just wait. I'll wait to show you that in a second. So it's also creating up here at the top interfaces. So this is a way that you can narrow down, like if you have hot leads, cold leads, if you have new leads within last week, if you have leads that you've been spoken to in a while, you can create what's called an interface so that you can click on that one specific, and then you can understand, you can just get that information and look at it. So it gives you a nice presentation of this. So for here, right, this is, you can think of it as like a mini like dashboard. So it has all of the submitted, all of the leads, like based on their category. So they email, event, and then the total leads, etc. We also have a submission calendar. So when were they added? When were they added here, right? And then we have our lead list. This is just, so this is also great, right? I have a lead list. You think, oh, this is like the same data, but it's reduced. It reduced the number of columns, so this is a little bit more concise to see just the information that you actually need to see. Now up here you can just go back to data, and this is the actual table that was created. Now what I was saying over here is this is an AI agent in this column. So what this agent is doing, so if I go here to edit the field, this is using GPT 4.1, and these are the custom instructions that it's using and it's using the notes field to put up like a summary here, right? So really you could insert a transcription here, and then it could go ahead and just create the summary for you within Airtable. And so the same thing with the lead source category, it's using an agent to figure out the lead, where to put it in the lead source category. Okay, it's absolutely amazing. That is so easy, and that's why I honestly really love Airtable. And they're very good about their privacy and security, which they have also improved. Okay, so back to the app, back to what we're building. So you can also up here, you can close Omni. You can kind of, this is Omni where you can open it. So let's go back here, right? So we are here now. We need to now save the record into Airtable. So you're going to type in Airtable. We are going to create a record. Now we first need to create an account. How do we do that? Well, actually, let's go back to Airtable. So how you do that is at the very bottom left, there's an account. You're going to go to Builder Hub. Okay, whenever this opens up, then right here, they don't use API keys, they use personal access tokens. So you're just going to create a token. And then you're going to put in the token's name. You can type in n8n lead form submission. Okay, then the scope is you want to be able to read and you want to be able to write. And then you can put some of these other things in here if you really want to, but I don't believe that you need to. You can just see comments. I mean, we could put the comments one, but there's really no reason. And then for the access, you can add a base. Now, all we're worried about is the lead base, right? I have others here, but we're only worried about the lead base, okay? Oh no, n8n leads, I'm sorry. It has it over here. I was about to choose the wrong one. n8n leads, lead submission tracker. Okay, this is the one we want to use because that's the one that was just created. So we're going to create a token. I'm going to copy this, and then what we're going to do is we're going to come back here. We're going to create a new credential, and then you're just going to basically paste in your access token. And it even tells you, make sure you have schema bases read, data records read, write. Actually, let's go back and make sure, did we add that for here? Data record, I think we need to add a scope, schema bases read. Okay, I'm sorry. So it said that we need schema bases read, so you can see the structure of the base, like table names or field types, which it does need. Okay, so you can always come back here and edit it and add another scope. You could even have it basically edit the table if you wanted to. Okay, so let's go back to n8n. We're going to click save. It's testing it, connection was successful. So now we should see our base in the list. Well, sometimes we need to refresh, so you can come back out. Okay, so I just made a stupid mistake. Make sure you save your changes, right? I'm actually glad I made that because hopefully somebody else does that with me. So make sure you save your changes. Now we're gonna come back here, go into create a record, and then we're gonna come here. Now from the base, you should see only lead submission tracker, and the table is going to be leads, and then it's going to automatically show the column. So we're just basically going to go back from our edit fields. We're just going to drag and drop everything here. Drag and drop the source, the company, notes. We can do the submitted ad, and as you see, the notes, summary, and lead source category we don't need because that's going to be done by AI agents. Now, I will tell you that this date format will not work. This is not actually. I know the format, but I'm just going. You can make it easier yourself. So down at the bottom, there's an add option. It's called typecast. Enable that, and then it'll worry about formatting the date to the way Airtable needs it. Okay, so let's go ahead and execute the step. Okay, great. It was successful. Now, if we go back, if we kind of go back to Airtable, we're going to go back to your lead submission tracker. Here is our new row. This is us. Now you see, it's making me choose to run the agent. So what you could do is in the column, you click the drop down arrow, edit field, and then run automatically. Click save, continue, confirm change, it's okay. See, now it's going to generate a notes summary, even though I don't really have much there. So then we can do the same thing for this, save that, same thing for lead source category, and then it's going to generate a lead source category for us as well. So it only really found web, which is fine, right? We didn't really do much with that. And then if we go to interfaces, we can see that our lead list has been updated, our lead insights has been updated. Now we have 7, and then the submission calendar is now, I have been, on the 17th is whenever this was been added. Okay, great. Now, the last thing you want to do is, from here, you can either choose to use Gmail or Slack. I already have Slack set up. What I'm going to tell you that you need to do with Slack is you go to Slack. You type in send a message because we want to send a message. Now, I already have a Slack account set up, but how you actually do this and what I'm going to recommend for you is if you go to create new credential, open the docs for the Slack credentials, right? I highly recommend just going through this, right? And it tells you, it recommends OAuth 2 for Slack node. So here's how you're going to create it for API access token. And then it has OAuth right here. So you need a client secret and client ID and client secret. So for OAuth, you don't put anything here. You're going to connect your account after you kind of go through this, right? But to create, you would go here to create your Slack app, which I already have. You can create a new app, enter the name, kind of go through some of the basic things here. Here are the scopes that you need. If you really want to, though, you could just use an access token. If you really want to go that route, you can. But it's just not recommended. So you would kind of come in here, create a new app, and just go through the documentation. If you really have trouble with that, let me know. But we're going to send a message to a channel that I have, and I know that, yeah, the list one, it really doesn't work. I don't know why. I could never get that to populate, so I just know that I have one called notifications. And then I'm going to give you a formatted message, which you can obviously tweak yourself. So you can actually just say new lead, and then we can give the first name with an email that we can pass in the email right in here. We can just drag and drop that in, source equals, and then we can just pass in the source. Okay, and then what I'll do is execute this step. This worked. Obviously, you need to see this for it to work. And then I'm going to go to Slack API. I'm going to go to my Slack notifications, and here we go. We got another new lead, except this time the source was from Twitter. So this is what it should look like. You will have access to this as well, but if you follow along, you should be able to do this as well. Of course, if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, but great job. Now we're gonna move on to the next section. Okay, great job with that project.
we dove into some more aspects that I think are really important with n8n, and we kind of got familiar with some of the nodes that we really need to know. So in this next part, we're going to learn in part 5 a code node, and this is going to be a simple crash course. We're going to have a slide and then actually go through an example. So when do you need to use code? Well, typically, if the code can replace a few other nodes, then that's great, because the code can transform all those nodes and make your flow look simpler and possibly just really be simpler in general. And this allows us to also more easily reshape arrays and objects and other types of data and combine them and transform them and do other things with that data. And then this allows you to keep it short and readable, although code nodes can become quite big. But if that's the case, you probably need to move them into separate nodes themselves. Okay, let's go ahead and go through that example. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I have a set of 5 articles, I'm just passing it as an array. So if we go ahead and run this split out, what this is going to do is I'm going to split out this array, and then I'm going to filter that array just by they have to be greater than 10 points, how they're rated, and they have to be a part of the tech industry. And then I'm going to sort them in descending order. I'm going to limit them to just the top 3. I'm just going to kind of format the fields so that whenever I go to put them all back together, when I do that, at the end, we're going to have an HTML output of everything that you can then send in an email. So if I were to run this does run rather quickly, very quickly actually. But what you see here is at the end, we have a final output of the top 3, and it's just some HTML format. Okay, but the thing is though, look at this. We have 7 nodes that are doing that. Okay, that's not necessarily ideal. Not saying that you don't need that in certain situations. I never want to say never that you need to do something right, but instead, why don't we try this? Okay, so we have these articles, right? Let me just copy this. Here's the other thing, is that you don't actually need to know how to code these, because you can either do it in JavaScript or some Python. The Python that they're using doesn't have all the libraries that you would like when you download the Python language onto your computer. So it's not exactly the same, but so I would typically just recommend JavaScript. But as a software engineer myself, I'm a backend engineer, I don't really code with JavaScript, and to be honest, I don't really care to. Because of that, and it's so popular, and it's used on the front end so much, I can ask ChatGPT or Cloud Code or somebody else, some other AI model, to come up with the code for me. So that's what we're going to do now. So I asked ChatGPT, can you give me JavaScript to filter out this by points, get the top 3, and then return them in an HTML format for an n8n code node. So I'm going to paste in the output from the article node. I'm just going to submit this. You're giving feedback. Okay, so now it's giving me 2 different responses. Okay, so it kind of gave me 2 different outputs. So let's try response number 2. Just from the looks of it, I think I kind of like the way 2 looks. So I'm just going to copy that code, come in here. Now I already have code that works, but let me just paste this in. Now we have all these articles. We're going to have one more node. That's a code node. We're going to execute this step, and we're going to see what it outputs. Okay, so we have the top 3, and then we also have HTML. Okay, so it gave me HTML just like it did with the output. And guess what? Instead of having all of these nodes, if I remove those, we now only have 3. And that's what makes this really powerful, in my opinion, is that instead of having all these separate nodes, we can have just one code node, and you don't even have to code it, right? So I made this a really simple crash course because I don't want to go in depth about what JavaScript is or anything, because we can just use ChatGPT or something else to create the code for us. Okay, and this is going to lead us into the next part. That was a small part, and that is RAG. This is going to be a little more in depth, and we're going to go through some slides. I'm going to explain to you what RAG is, and then we're going to go over a decent example of how to actually build this. We're going to build this together. So what is RAG? Well, RAG is like when we chunk documents into smaller pieces. Okay, then when we say we want to embed something, this is when we're basically giving those smaller pieces a numeric fingerprint, and we store these in a vector database, not a SQL database. Well, it's not the same as a SQL database. When we say vector database, we're storing these as vectors, a numeric value. And then when we want to query something based on a simple question answer, well, when we go to ask the question, we're going to do a similarity search for the top K chunks. So that can be some top number, top 5 chunks, and then we're going to give that to the LLM, which will then format that into a response back to us to answer our question. So when to use RAG?
Well, you want to use RAG when you already have your documents, like you have PDFs, your wikis, any other type of document, and these documents can change or grow over time. And if you also need citations or snippets as part of your answers, don't want to use RAG if you're just doing pure creative tasks, right? You don't need to save any of these vectors inside of a vector database. For pure creative tasks, just talk to the LLM. And then if you only need structured data from a database, so a structured database would be a SQL database, a typical SQL database, and you don't need that, right? And if the model already knows the information, we don't need to use RAG, right? So if you want to store like history, probably it already has that information. You don't need to really store that, right? Or you can even just do some search online for that. So how do we chunk and what are we storing? Okay, well, typically we want to have a chunk size, well, I won't say typically, but a standard is a chunk size between 5 and 1,000 tokens, typically like 2 to 4 paragraphs, and you want to have an overlap of 50 to 150 tokens. Now, we'll be using 250 in the example that we're going to be developing, but this means that instead of having a strict cutoff at 1,000 tokens each, and then that means that you could be in the middle of a word too, and then the next chunk will have a part of that word, and it might not make sense. So you have an overlap so that the ends and the beginnings might be similar, but it has a little bit more reference to what that chunk is. And then you want to keep metadata. This is really going to be helpful for retrieval. So you typically can use a title, page, source, section, or tags a part of that metadata. Then the search depth is the top K that we just talked about. So it's going to be like 3 to 5 chunks that you want to return. So in this example, this is going to be like if you're onboarding a new employee. For instance, we're onboarding a new software engineer to your company. The trigger here is if you, as an administrator or manager, add documents to a Google Drive folder, it's going to take that document, download it, extract it, get some information from it, and we're going to store that into a vector database. Then when the employee, when they're onboarding, they can ask, basically as a chatbot, ask questions from that same vector database to any question they have, whether it's about HR, anything IT related, what they need or how to set things up to get ready for their job. They can then chat with this, and it's going to be able to answer those questions because it's going to have all documents related to this specific onboarding. All right, so let's go ahead and start developing this now. Okay, so we have a new workflow. The first thing is we're going to have a Google Drive trigger. So Google Drive, we want to Google Drive, and triggers is on changes involving a specific folder. Okay, so what we can do here is we can create a folder in Google Drive, or if you already have one, let's create one together, right? Let's create one together. So in Drive, let's go ahead and just create a new folder. This is going to be called onboarding. Okay, so it's just called onboarding. So from the list, I can start kind of searching by the name here. It's going to come up, onboarding. Okay, so we want to watch for a file created in Google Drive. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually do a test. And what I did was I used ChatGPT to go ahead and give me 3 PDFs that I can use. I'm going to do the first one, which will be a software engineering book. Okay, so I have a simple software engineer employee handbook. This is a PDF for the company that I uploaded. So now if we go ahead and run this Google Drive trigger, it's waiting for an event, and this is the Google Drive. This is actually the handbook, right? So right here is the name of that. Okay, great. So what we want to check though, just to make sure, is that we only want PDFs to be involved, right? Maybe we don't want documents, or maybe you store other files or something happens by accident. So let's go and just make sure that this is a PDF. So if, and then down here, if we scroll down, there's the MIME type. So if we bring that over, we want to make sure that it's equal to application/PDF. Then if we execute this step, it should return true still. Okay, great. So now we're just only dealing with PDFs. And now we want to download this file. So if you go to Drive, Google Drive, there is a download file action. So we're going to download the file. And from the list, actually the file, let's do by ID, because you get the ID, if we scroll down here, right here. So you get this ID, that'll be a part of the data. So let's go ahead and execute this step, and this should give us a binary file that is a PDF, and it is. This is the actual software engineer PDF that we are going to be downloading. Okay, great. So now we need to extract the data from this PDF, really the text, right? So if we type in extract from a file, this is convert binary data to JSON, because we have a binary file now. So we want to extract from PDF. The input, data is fine. This is essentially, you don't really have to change anything else from this. So execute the step, and then we should get the text. Yeah, here is the actual text, part of the text. Yeah, there is the text that we have. Okay, great. So now we have that information. And now what I want to do is I want to have a set field just to make sure that I have just the information that I actually need. So I'm going to drag and drop the text from the extract file node. And then also from the, let's see, I don't think it's here, from the download. Oh yeah, it is here, right? So we can put this here. So now we have the name, I'm going to say file underscore name. So now we have the name and the text. So the name of the file and the actual text. Okay, so if I execute this should just output the two fields that we need. So now we can use these fields for whatever we want. But now we have quite a few options, because now we want to store this into a vector database to be used as part of the chat. So if we go and add the node, you can type in vector store, and there are quite a few here that we can choose from. All great. But what we're going to do today is we're going to use Quadrant Vector Store, because I just think it's one of the easier ones to set up. So we're going to choose Quadrant Vector Store, or we're going to choose Add Documents to Vector Store. Okay, so the first thing we're actually going to do is we're going to go ahead and create our credentials for this vector database. So you can go to quadrant.com, quadrant.tech. I think they must have quite a few domains, but this is all free too, right? You don't have to pay anything to get this running, to test this out. So go ahead and sign up or log in if you already have a login. And once you do, on the left-hand side in your dashboard, you go to clusters, and this is what you will look like, right? I went ahead and deleted my free cluster, so we're gonna start over again. So I'm gonna just name my cluster n8n vector, and then you're just going to choose create free cluster. Okay, great. So it's okay that you see this, because I'm not going to have this vector store after anyways. So we need two things here. So let's go ahead and copy the API key. We're going to go back to our node. So let's go ahead and create a new credential for Quadrant. So if you can see, we need an API key and a Quadrant URL. Just go ahead and paste the API key in, go back to Quadrant, and you can get the URL from the request down here. You basically just copy this long URL right here after the GET request. So we're gonna copy that. Yours will be different, okay? So don't worry if it's different. Then we're gonna paste that in, and I'm gonna do a simple test. So I'm gonna save this. It's testing. Okay, great. It has the connection. That's what I want, right? And also, we don't have a collection, right? Collection is where we're going to store all of our chunks to then later retrieve as part of our chat. Okay, so now what we can do is there's a couple of things, there are a couple different things that we could do now. We can either go into their UI, we can create the collection with a couple parameters, or we could try to do that here within the Quadrant Vector Store, because it's our first time inserting into it. It should create that for us as well, create the collection for us. So I'm going to choose by ID, type in a name onboarding, and then for adding options, I don't think there's anything we need here. Nope. So the next thing, if we come back to the canvas, is we need an embedding. Okay, so we're going to use OpenAI embeddings, right? So there's two different, or I guess three, I'm sorry. Just choose a small one. You don't need to use the large for this. And then for the options, we don't need anything here. But for the document, we're going to choose default data loader. And what we want to do is just load all of the input data, so the text and the file name. Okay, we can, you can choose custom. You can have a custom text splitter, but I think for this we don't necessarily need it right now. In here, we could also add metadata as well to kind of make this a little bit more refined. I'm not going to worry about that too much right now, because I want to make sure that you kind of just understand the basics, how it works, and actually get one of these running. Okay, but it is important. I'm not saying it's definitely important to do that. It's going to help, actually makes it helpful, but let's not worry about that right now. So what we have now is our default data loader to get the data ready for the Quadrant Vector Store, and we have our embeddings. Now let's see if we can run this. So let's execute the step. If there are any errors happen, we will go ahead and address that. But it doesn't look like that. So what's actually happening here? This is kind of a strange output, right? So remember, we have it set. I think the default data loader for for simple, right, it splits every 1,000 characters with a 200 character overlap that we had mentioned in the slide. Okay, so that's what's happening here. Its output is these are basically this is 100 characters, and it's going to have an overlap with the others as well. Okay, so that is essentially what's happening here, and that's great. And we are now ready to see if we can build a chatbot from this data, because now this data is in Quadrant. But actually, first, let's see if we can look at the data. So if we go back to Quadrant, then if you go to Cluster UI, at the top right, Cluster UI, now it's going to bring up a different page. Okay, now we have our collection. This is the onboarding collection. If we come over here to the actions and go to visualize, right here, over here on the top right, you have to click the run button. It's a little hidden, right? But here are the 4 points of data. So here is each of these points is represented in the vector database, and these are, it's going to look for this data depending on whatever we ask of it. Okay, great job. So now we're going to get the chats up. In order to have a chat, let's right click, add a node, and we're going to just type in chat, and there is a chat trigger. That is what we want. So let's move, mine was in the middle here, so just move it out of the way. And then what we're going to do is we're going to then use a question and answer chain. Okay, there are a couple of different ways we could do this. We could also create an AI agent that has a tool for the Quadrant Vector Store, but I'm just going to show you this way because this is a chatbot and this is a simpler way to do it. Okay, so now with a question answer chain, we need a couple of things. First off, we need a model. So you can use any model you want. I'm just going to use OpenAI. You can be more than willing to use whatever you need, right? Okay, so after that, then we need the retriever. And the retriever is, we want to use a vector store to retrieve the information. So a vector store retriever, the limit of 4 is fine. And then now we need a vector store. So here we're going to choose Quadrant Vector Store. Okay, now we already have it. Make sure you're using your correct account from the Quadrant collection. Now we already know what it is, right? So we know it's onboarding. Then from the Quadrant Vector Store, we need an embedding. So we're going to choose OpenAI's embedding and just leave it the way it is. Okay, great. So right here, we are now about done with the chat. Let's go ahead and test this out. Now, to open the chat, at the bottom here, once you create the chat trigger, you just click Open Chat. Okay, so now what we need to do is just simply ask anything. So if we go back to the Quadrant store or the vector database, we can actually see something. So how about we ask what your role and responsibilities are as a software engineer? Let's ask that so we can test it. What is our role and responsibility as a software engineer? Okay, so we're gonna press enter. As you can see, it retrieved information from the vector store pretty quickly. So if we can actually look in here from the Quadrant Vector Store, this was the response. So it limited to 4, getting 4 points of data. And so from that 4 points, this is the vector store retriever, okay, that we used. And what it's going to do is we're going to send this back to the model, and then it's going to take from that information, kind of based on the question, and then respond with whatever the answer should be based on the data it was given. So in this case, as a software engineer, or actually here's the output, I'm sorry. As a software engineer, your roles include writing clean code, writing clean, maintainable, and testable code, etc. There's 5 bullet points, right? So if we go back to the vector database store, you will write clean, maintainable, and testable code, participate in code reviews. Like all of that information is here. It got it from the vector database. Okay, and if we add more information, more documents to our Google Drive folder, it will then take that information, store that in here, and then we can then ask more questions. So let's go ahead and actually add some more data. Okay, so I added an IT setup and benefits PDF. So if we come back here, let's come back up here. We're gonna execute, let's execute the workflow from the Google Drive trigger. It's gonna see that we have a new file. It's going to insert back into our Quadrant Vector Store. So if I refresh this, so if I come back here and I rerun this, you see that we now have more points, and these other points have information about the handbook that we just got. So I don't really know the information that we got, right? So I think this is a new one. This is, so let's ask what the contact and resources are. So we have HR department, IT help desk, and IT help desk. Okay, so let's go ahead and ask the chat. So let's open the chat. Instead, what are the contacts and key? Or okay, I think. let's just ask that. That doesn't really make any sense, but it should retrieve information, and let's see, the output. Okay, let me bring it up here so it makes sense. So here, the output, the key contacts are the HR department and the IT help desk, and here are the benefits provided, and it also gave me the security team. Okay, so great. Now we just added that. It wouldn't have got that before, but now it did because it was a part of this onboarding, the documents that we had uploaded to our vector database. This is really great for onboarding. This means that also at any time you can add more documents to help people onboard. Now, what if you need to update? Well, if you need to update, you could just add another flow to update the data that's a part of the vector database. Okay, great job with the project. Now we're going to go into another subject or another area of AI agents. So for part 7, we're going to understand AI agents and then create a workflow with a lot of tools for an AI agent. But first, what is an AI agent? Well, an AI agent is a system that pursues a goal autonomously. This means that it's given tools, memory, and action loops instead of just responding to prompts. So like if you're talking to ChatGPT, do this and it just responds to you, or that's also considered a completion. Now, what are the key parts? Well, there's tools and data interfaces. So these are things that can reach out to third-party APIs. They can search for things, access databases. There's memory and context that persists, and I have done a video on context engineering, which means that you give more information about the task at hand so that the agent or the tool understands what it's supposed to do. There's decision logic and planning on which those tools are supposed to be used for. And you should, and I don't even think this is really done enough, but you should have safety and planning. And this is really to prevent things that shouldn't be a part of the prompt, or things that shouldn't be injected into the LLM. And this is also known as guardrails. So you can have input guardrails, then what is output, you should also have guardrails there as well. And now we're going to go ahead and create from scratch our own workflow called a Telegram agent. Okay, so what I mean by this is, first off, you're going to learn a new trigger. So we're going to have some text input from a Telegram trigger. We'll go ahead and set that up. And then we're going to create an AI agent with a good prompt. We're going to use a chat model, and then we're going to have all of these tools that the agent has access to. So these are tools that allow us to just give a prompt, and it's going to decide how and which tools to use. It doesn't need to use all of them just because it has them. It needs to decide which one's based off of what we're sending from our Telegram message. And then finally, we are going to get our final reply. So the first step is we need to deal with Telegram. This means that our trigger that we're going to use that's waiting for an input from a Telegram message, that we need to give n8n access to that. So if you've never used Telegram before, the first thing is download or install Telegram on your your Google or Apple device, and just go ahead and create a sign-in or create a login. Then once you log in, you can either download the Telegram app like I have here on my Mac, or you can go to web.telegram.com and go ahead and go there. Okay, so then what you need to start by doing is a chat with a BotFather. So you can search for BotFather. I think you have to do this through webtelegram.org or through the app on your phone device, or iPad or whatever. I don't know if you can do it through the app that I have on my Mac, but you're just going to search for the BotFather. So there are some copies out there, so search for the one with several million users or whatever, but just find the most popular one that just says BotFather, and then when you start chat with that, you're just going to follow directions. So starting with number 2, and by the end, you're going to copy the bot token the BotFather generates and add it as the access token in n8n. Okay, so now that you have the access token, or that you're going to have it, we're going to create a new workflow. So here we're going to add a trigger, which is going to be Telegram. So we're going to search for Telegram. On the trigger, you just want to say on message. This can actually be used for voice or text message. So we're going to say on this message, and then from here, we're going to go ahead and add an AI agent. So you do this by adding the next node, and this is AI. Just search for AI agent. You will see it here. And so the first thing is it's default that is connected to a chat trigger node. We are not, so we have to go ahead and choose the define below, and then this will give us a prompt. You can also add a system message. This is just your helpful, we can say Telegram assistant. And then here in the prompt, this is where we're going to construct some of the directions, kind of like what we want our prompt to do based on certain situations, like what tools it's going to have access to, how we want them to use it, etc. We'll do that in a little bit, but first, let's go ahead and just say you will help me as much as possible, just so we don't err out in here. But we are missing one thing that's necessary is a chat model. So this means that we need access to an LLM for us to perform, for the AI agent to be able to do anything. So here I'm going to choose OpenAI. You can certainly use any one that you want. If you've been following along, you can just use whatever you've been using. I've been using OpenAI, so that's what we're going to use. Okay, I'm okay with GPT 4.1 mini right now. Now, let's go ahead and just do a simple test. So you can execute the workflow, right? You probably won't have any events waiting for you, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I have my bot up here. I've been playing around with another project that we're going to do here soon. Hello, how are you? So if I send this, now you can see that in the background, everything is working properly. And it says, "Course, I'm here to help you with anything you need. What can I assist you with?" Okay, so at this point, you should have that, right? So now the next part, what we're going to do is we want to start adding tools. Okay, at this point, you can decide on which tools you'd like to have, or you can just follow along with me and just go. Let's go over the first couple things that we're going to add. Okay, so for tool, just click the plus button here, and I'm going to first choose email. Gmail, not email, Gmail. And what I want to do here is I want this specific tool. This is going to send a message to somebody, get a subject, and have a message. What's really nice about this is for the subject, you can choose to let the model define this parameter. Okay, we could also let the model define this parameter as well. So for instance, if we are receiving a text message, then we could also put in the text message who we want the email sent to, and we could let the model define and retrieve that from the information so that it would put that email address in here. And the same thing for the message, but what we are going to do is actually, for now, hard code it. We will come back to this and change it just to kind of just so that you can see that it's working with AI generated parameters. So next is we have the message. Okay, so for now we're also going to let the model define this parameter, and this is okay because in the prompt of the actual AI agent, we're going to tell it it should be using a generated HTML based on whatever it is that we are going to be sending in that current email. I also want to add another one. I'm going to add Gmail again, so you can have multiple Gmail tools, except this one, instead of send, I want to get many. This is going to you can limit to the last number of email messages. You can also filter by received after, received before, specific labels. You can do by sender. There's quite a few different filters you can use to kind of make this specific. So you can actually have multiple. You could, if you wanted, have a couple different message tools, and it would choose the correct one for you. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test this. But first, if you haven't already, we need a Gmail credential. This is really easy if you're using the hosted one. All you do is you're going to create a new credential. You're going to sign in with Google and just sign in with your account, and you're ready to go. The Gmail node or credential is that easy. That's it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to 2. Okay, great. So now what we need is kind of a better prompt for our AI agent, so it knows kind of when we want to send a message or when we would just want to retrieve and do something with a bunch of other messages. Okay, so what I did is I said I need a prompt for my AI agent. It has 2 tools, at least right now. We can modify this. It's a send tool and another one that is going to be retrieving tools. And I said that the send email tool has a property for HTML and the subject. Okay, so basically now it's going to just kind of give me some things that I can add. Decision. Okay, we may not need all of this, right? But you can certainly go ahead and modify this. I am going to use this right now. So let's go ahead and just copy this, and let's go ahead and put this into our AI agent. Or I'm going to open that up a little bit more. Okay. Your inputs. So the inputs is a single Telegram message. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the text message here. So again, from the Telegram trigger, just drag the text in, and we'll put it right over there. I don't know why it does this. I think I feel like that's something messed up with how it you drag and drop. But I'm going to again drag the text right over here. Okay, so we have 2 tools: the get all email and the send email. We can come back and fix that, but for now, let's go ahead and see let's just see how this does. Okay, so what I also want to do is restart this. So I'm going to execute the workflow. Now we're going to come back in, And I want to say I need a summary of my last 50 emails sent back to me. It should be brief. Okay, so I'm going to send this, and now what's happening is the AI agent is going to first, because of what I'm asking, it needs to retrieve emails from my Gmail account, and then it's going to, you go back to AI, it's going to grab a summary, and it's going to kind of format, it should format everything so that we can inject the subject and the HTML inside of the send a message to Gmail tool. Okay, so we're going to, while it's working, we're just going to stay here. So again, it's exactly what's happening, and then it always goes back to the chat model last, just to kind of say, you know, what it did. Okay, so before we check like our email, just again, at first, because of the instructions that I had the ChatGPT create for me, it got quite a few emails, and then we sent a summary of that to our email. So let's see what it looks like. Okay, so here's a summary of the last 50 emails. Here's a brief summary. This is definitely a brief summary. Okay, but this is what I wanted. This is something that I asked for. I didn't really give it too much information, so it didn't really know. Okay, great job. So what I want you to do is pause the video, and I want you to try to add a few calendar tools. I'm going to go ahead and pause, and then come back and resume this so that we can do it together. So go ahead and pause. Okay, now we're back. So let's go ahead and add some tools for the calendar. So calendar. So Google Calendar tool. Let's see, this one is going to be creating event. Yes, so I'm going to choose my Gmail calendar, starting from the start time. Create an event. This should be AI, right? This should be based on what I say. So this means you can also add a description, which is always good. Really add descriptions. This is the start time of the event. This is the end time of the event. It's always good to give your tools, give AI as much to work with as possible. Go ahead and add another one. Let's move these. Actually, I'm going to move these down a little bit. Okay, so add another tool. Let's call this, let's do another calendar one. Google Calendar tool, except this time we are going to be getting many from my calendar. Again, should be AI driven based on the prompt. And then we can add another tool, calendar. Let's figure out what we want to do with this one. What do we want to do with this one? Let's delete an event too. Okay, let's go ahead and delete the event. That should be from the model. Okay, great. So what we've done is we've added 3 more tools. You know, this is what's a great thing about AI. This is also another plus about having an AI agent do these with tools. I don't have to rearrange anything on my automation flow, right? It's just a tool given to the AI agent, and I just have to really update the prompt if I want to. That's it. Okay, so what I did is I just asked it to add 3 more tools. So I'm just going to now, it just came out with, it gave me another prompt. So I'm just going to come in here. Now when I do this, I do have to re-add the JSON text message. Your inputs, so I'm gonna re-input that right here. You can also tidy this up if you want. Tidy up like your goals, like it just adds a space to everything, it feels like. But okay, so this is what we're gonna do. Now we're gonna go ahead and save this. Let's add this, let's call this Google AI agent. We will come back another time where you really what you'd wanna do is you have a sub tool or sub agent that has those specific tools. You really don't want to mix and match too much, because if you wanted to keep adding more, you shouldn't really do it that way, but we'll have another project where we do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and execute the workflow. Now we're going to just go straight into Telegram. This time, what I want to do is, can you add an event for tomorrow at 5 p.m. to make sure I edit the videos, to make sure I get the videos edited, and then also send the summary of that event to me in an email. Okay, so let's just do something like this. We'll see how this works. So it's going to create the event. Actually, I already created the event. Then it went ahead and already sent the Gmail message, and it's done. So let's see. Okay, so first of all, it sent me an email saying that I wanted to get the videos edited, scheduled for 5 p.m. tomorrow. It said to view the event in Google Calendar. Well, let's see. By the way, I'm going to tell you right now, what you always need to do is you need to say today's date and now is an inline variable, or is a variable that within n8n. Do this so that it knows when it does something, it needs to add an event, delete, or something that's based off the current time. And then it can do, like for tomorrow, it can understand what that means. If you don't do that, you're not going to see it on your calendar, you're not going to get that correctly. Just like I did in the new mistake, rookie mistake. So let's go ahead and redo this so we can actually see it working. Okay, so I reran it with that date now, and now we should see the correct information. Okay, so now it's scheduled for tomorrow, September 19th from 5 to 6 p.m. Here are some event details. Now let's go to Google Calendar and look at it. Okay, so here is from 5 to 6 p.m. tomorrow on the 19th. That is tomorrow. And other things that you can do is if you go into the calendar tool, there are other fields like the description. You can have that AI generated. You can have guests, like how guests can invite, max attendees. You can send updates, like repeat how many times you want to repeat this calendar event in the future, etc. Right? You can do all of those things and let AI deal with that for you, so you don't have to make sure, kind of try to drag and drop something into that field, which as a tool you really can't. It's hard to do that, right? So it's best to just have the prompt updated and then just let AI update or insert the correct values into each of those properties. Well, the final thing to do is send that back. Send that back to us in Telegram. So I spelled send when I meant to say Telegram, and send a message. Send a text message. Okay, so what we're going to do is just drag and drop this output. The chat ID, you go back to the Telegram trigger, just drag and drop this ID right here. And then what we're going to do is just, we're going to run this. Added the event to edit videos tomorrow at 5 p.m. and send you an email with the summary and details of the event. Okay, great. That is exactly what I wanted. Great job. You just created your AI agent with up to 5 tools. Certainly add more. You can do a little less if you want. And we figured out how to use Telegram as a trigger node and then send us a message back. Great job. Okay, great job on project number 4, which is the Telegram agent. We learned quite a few things there. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next section, which is part 8, and we're going to talk about sub workflows. Now, before we go what that looks like in n8n, why am I even talking about sub workflows? Well, I think this is a really important aspect that I don't think many people take in consideration, especially if not for the pure reason of readability of these automation workflows, right? So what this does is it can kill spaghetti flows. You know, if you've heard of spaghetti code, it's just kind of everywhere. Some of it doesn't really make sense. It's probably reused. But what this does is it allows us to have fewer nodes per section, and we have clear intent. This is actually a really important topic. It's clear intent. What exactly is this section of your flow doing? We need to know, with confidence, what this is supposed to do. And then this also means if we have sub workflows, we can reuse them, right? If we have something that generates a newsletter and all it takes in is content, and we have an AI agent that forms it and then sends it off to a newsletter, that can be a part of multiple workflows. It doesn't have to be recreated each time. And this allows for safer updates. You can edit it once and then you can improve everywhere, right? So if you did want to edit your newsletter, you realize, oh, I can make the HTML better. Well, if you don't do it this way, where we have a sub workflow that's attached to all those projects, then you have to update that everywhere. But here, you have to update it in one spot. And the next part is in team projects. Honestly, even if you're just by yourself, if you look back at it like a week or even like maybe a month later, if you have the separation of concerns, then you know what each part of your flow is supposed to do. So let's go ahead and look at what we can do with this, how it looks, and how you do this in n8n. Okay, let's go over what I've got going on here. So this is a sample project that you will have. Let's go in over here on the left side first. So we have some API key here. We have queries here. So this is what we want to query in Google search for. So if it's AI automation, n8n tutorials, whatever that may be. So this just separates the queries. So it's just a simple code node that maps out the queries so they're separated. And then Firecrawl, this is actually going to search using Firecrawl's web scraper. You can get that for free. We're gonna flatten and map that. So it's just so we can loop over them. Especially in the free plan, you can't scrape everything at once. They have a rate limit, so you kind of have to wait a little every so often before it allows you to request scraping again. So that's what this loop is for. We do every 2 URLs. It's going to actually extract the information from those websites. Then we're going to wait 30 seconds, and then do it again for the next two. And then until all that's done, we have a code node, and we're going to aggregate them, everything all together. So basically, all of the markdown or data from those websites we're going to put together. And in this aggregate, we're going to go to three separate things here. Let me zoom out a little bit. One, I've actually already created a sub workflow. This is a newsletter sub workflow. Then we also have a simple AI agent, which is going to represent for blog post. And then this one down here is going to represent for LinkedIn. Okay, so what you see here is this may seem simple, right? But if later I want to come on and like maybe I say for the blog post, I also want to do something with WordPress. Okay, well I can do that. I can do that here. I can create a post in WordPress also. And once that's done, I can also add a Gmail node. Maybe I want to send a message, right? And then maybe also while I send that, I do want to update. Maybe I want to do Airtable. Maybe I want to update an Airtable record as well, right? Maybe I want, create or update a record. Okay, so I can do these, but I do have to come into this workflow and do that. And if I want to use this again for other workflows, which you most certainly would want to do something like this, you don't really want to recreate everything. I know in the tutorial series that I'm doing, we're recreating some things, but that's just we're leading up to sub workflows. But if I want to do this, I do have to come directly into this workflow. This is a relatively simple project that we're doing, and we're going to be uploading a blog post. But if this was more complicated, it's going to be hard to come back, look at the rest of the flow, understand exactly what's going on, and then update this again. Whereas we could just separate this out into its own sub workflow. So how do we do that exactly? What I kind of recommend, a way to test it, is just put everything together like you are. Like you already would create a workflow in n8n. Then what you can do is you can highlight all the nodes that you want to be as part of a sub workflow. You highlight them, then you right click, and we're going to convert these 6 nodes, right? It says 6 nodes, right? We have, it counts the chat model in the memory, like those are our nodes. Those are considered nodes. So we're going to go down to convert nodes to sub workflow. We can call this blog post. So now we have one node that is going to go to blog post. And if you want, you can come down here, open a new tab. Let's say you're coming in here and you forgot what it's called. You can right click and choose go to sub workflow. And now here is the exact workflow. And here's the entry node from the main workflow. So once it comes here, it comes to call blog post. It's going to take all of the input or all the output from the aggregate node and send it off here, and so it's going to perform like it was in your normal normal flow. I don't know why I could think of the word. And then it's going to come back here, and if you had more, you would probably merge these together if you wanted some output, and whatever the output is of the last node here. So I think in this case it would be Airtable, because n8n works top down. So it would come back here, and that's what it would return. Probably the node that it created or updated, it would come back as the response from here. And you could potentially do more after this, right? Now, ideally, you could put other parts as sub workflows, right? Like this one, we're separating an array of queries. Then we're going to actually do Google search through Firecrawl. We're going to flatten and then map them and return them. So you could actually make this sub workflow as well, because this is really just Google searching with your Firecrawl API key. So we could right click, convert these 3 nodes to sub workflow, and say Firecrawl search. Okay, now we have the Firecrawl search. Let me zoom out. Let's see if we tidy. I don't know if I like the way it tidied it up, but either way, that's fine. So if we tie that up, now it's a smaller workflow. And if you really need to go in here, you can. But we know that if next time we want to create, if I want to create another node, let's say I branch off. Let me just do this. If I just say, hey, you know what I want to do is I just want to query something else, right? So I can actually, let me just show you using another workflow. Let's save this, right? So I'm going to duplicate this. We're just going to create a new flow. So I'm going to create a new flow. I'm going to add another manual trigger, and let's say I have add some fields. And here I'm going to have an array. Let's call this queries. And in here, let's say AI automation, and I want another query. This is like how you would Google search, how to use n8n. Okay, so now I have an array. I can execute this step, And so after I run this, you can see that we have AI automation and how to use n8n. These are the two queries that we want to run in Firecrawl. So if I open up the sub workflow, so it has entries in there, right? It has workflow input. So this just means I want to query within the last day. So D stands for day at the end there. That means we have to query in the last day, and we want to add in the JSON queries. Okay, so then if I go to the sub workflow again, although I think I already had it open, that this should take in the JSON, the queries part of the JSON, and then separate them out, and then I can do the search here. Okay, so let's go ahead and just try that. Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so what it came back with, this is exactly what we wanted. And we got how to automate anything, a 4-step beginner's guide, so Medium, a YouTube guide, actually 2 YouTubes, and also then another one in from plain English. So this is great. This is exactly what we wanted, right? I just reused the Firecrawl search node that I had created. I just reused that, and then now we have it in another workflow. I mean, it was really that easy to set up. Of course, you could have a different setup, right? You don't necessarily, you probably want to have the queries here, but also for the date range, you want to have that set, right? That's specific for this. But it was just that easy to reuse those nodes, okay? And that's the idea, is if you have sub workflows, you can reuse those sub workflows anywhere. Okay, so you've done a great job so far. That we've learned a lot. We've had some projects, learned some different concepts. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to go straight into another project, because we're getting towards the end. We have a couple projects. So in this one, what we're going to do is we're going to create an image agent as part of a workflow, but we're going to create our own tools, which are separate automations, kind of like sub workflows. So here you can see that we have a Telegram trigger. This is probably the last time we'll be using Telegram. And what this will do is we'll send a photo and an image, or just a text. And then depending on what it is, it's going to either determine if it's just text to create an image, or if it also has a photo, it'll edit the image based off of the caption that we sent with it. Now, this looks relatively simple, but each of these tools here are actually separate workflows. So if we right click and go to the sub workflow here, it's going to open up, and what we're going to have, as you can see, is we have our own workflow to edit an image. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through an example. Okay, so I just took a picture of myself, and let's say I want to edit this image to have a rock band playing behind me. Okay, now just something random. So let's go ahead and execute this workflow. And so what it's going to do now is, as part of the prompt of the image agent, it's going to decide which tool to use. In this case, it should only use the image editing tool. So once it decides from the chat model, it's going to come in here, go through the flow of the image editing tool, and then once it creates the file, as we see here, once it edits the image, creates a new file, it's going to upload to Google Drive. I don't know why I couldn't say that. And then we're going to return just the name, ID, and the file type, okay, which we can use for later on. And you can see it completed the workflow. Now if we come back here I am with the rock band playing behind me. Okay, nothing crazy really about that, but I just wanted to show you what is possible, and what really we can do is we can create our own tools in n8n just like this, and this allows us to have our own separate automations that we can use that tool elsewhere, right? Like I just talked about, reuse and having separation of concerns. Being able to reuse that tool in another automation is part of, as another AI agent, part of an automation flow, is wonderful. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. We're going to build this from scratch. I'm going to show you every step of the way. Let's go ahead and get started now. Okay, as usual, what we're going to do is we're going to base this off a Telegram trigger. And I know that this isn't really realistic way that you would use when you're selling something. If anything, you'd probably be using WhatsApp, as a more business professional. But this is really just to kind of teach you, right? I understand that a lot of this, there's a big part of ingesting the data, of how we do that, but that really, if you're going to sell an automation, you really have to understand how they ingest their data or how they store their data, and then you'll go from there. Okay, this really is, I really don't know this would be used very much in production. Okay, so we have a Telegram trigger. Again, this is for a tutorial. The goal isn't really to understand how we ingest, it's the whole automation flow of how we're going to solve a problem. Okay, but this is just teaching you different things that we can do when you get to that point. Okay, so we have a Telegram account. We want to trigger on a message. So we're going to be waiting for a message. And now let's go ahead and we're going to create a set field. Okay, so in order to kind of test this to see, like, how do we know which photo to use? How do we know to get the caption? If there's text, etc. Right? How do we know that? Well, if you click the execute workflow, it's waiting for an event. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to copy this media, right click, paste this, and this is going to be as if we're sending a photo and with a caption, because caption is different than a text message. Okay, edit this image to be on the beach. So it triggered. Now in the edit set fields, what you're gonna do, this is how you can also test, is when you come here, or the message, we have the from, there's some basic information, these are all the variables, right? So what we need is there's different sizes here. The AI model really won't be able to distinguish in the smaller sizes. It's going to be too small for it to really understand and do something. So I just kind of always pick the biggest size, right? So I'm going to choose the file ID, and then we also, but I don't like the way that's called, so we can edit like the variable name for that. Okay, we also need the chat ID. This is kind of like the chat underscore ID, and then we also need the caption. So the caption right here. Now the problem is this may not exist. So if it doesn't exist, see right here, edit this image to be on the beach. That's what we sent in. You want to add the double question marks and then just empty. You can just put empty quotes here, right? So this is, if this doesn't exist, just send empty quotes. So in case it ends up being used, it's not going to like fail something necessarily. Okay, same thing for the photo. You know, it could not exist. We could just send a text message. But what is a text message? We don't know that. So let's go ahead and go back. And what we're going to do is we're going to execute the workflow. What does this look like? Generate an image. And I spelled that right, it doesn't matter. But we just want to test something. So we want to know what the text message would look like. Okay, so here it's a separate field. We wouldn't have known, and also make this kind of, oops, that's not right. Make it in case, basically it's saying like it's kind of optional. If it doesn't exist, just pass empty quotes in. Okay, so this is basically, this won't exist if we would pass in a photo and caption, right? And let's also rename these. This is kind of best practice. This is a great way, is you can rename all this information. And now that I'm thinking of it, I don't think we really need the chat ID right now. I think we can actually just get rid of the chat. I don't think we need that. Okay, but as you can see here, this doesn't exist, right? And that's okay if we do that when it doesn't exist. We're not going to use it. We're not going to use it later on. You can see that it still passed. It went through, but it's null because it didn't exist. Now, to make this, to be able to even generate or do anything with images, we need a Gemini API key. Gemini API key, because we're going to be using Gemini's one HTTP request node, and the other using it from their Gemini's node that they have in n8n. So we're going to get that, and we also need our access token as well. There are better ways to do this. If you pay for the plan, you can actually have the secrets or variables stored on the cloud so that you can access them differently, but I don't, and there's a good chance that you may not either, especially if you're just getting this or starting out. So what we need to do now is go to Gemini console. See, Gemini, Google AI Studio. Now they kind of changed some of this stuff. They have changed some things up. Okay, so if you, first off, when you get here, log into your Google account, go down to your get API key, and then what you're going to do is you can just go ahead and create a new API key or whatever that may be. Okay, so here when you go, you can either create your API key, but whenever you do this, so let's go create an API key. But it's going to ask you to select from a project. Okay, so to create that project, you're going to go to Google Cloud Console, and then up here at the top left, if you haven't, you'll sign in again with the same email that you're going to use, and you can create a new project. Now, when you create the new project, so let's go ahead and create a new project. I'm going to call this image agent, and then just, I don't have an organization, so I think maybe no organization is there by default. So let's go ahead and switch this to, it's building the image agent. This is just the name of the project. I'll probably delete this afterwards, but just want to show you how it is. So image agent, okay, so we come here. Now on the left-hand side, we scroll down, you can go to billing. Okay, so this project has no billing account. So what we're going to see is basically if we can use the Google Nano as of right now for free without linking a billing account. Now, I did have, when I showed you, I had a I linked a billing account, but let's go ahead and do this first, then we'll come back to that. Okay, so we're gonna come back and create the API key. we're going to search here, and we're going to choose image agent, create key in existing project. Okay, so this is going to generate an API key. Okay, copy. And then what you're going to do is you're going to paste this right here. And then same thing for the access token. In the previous project, when we got the access token, you are also going to paste that here as well. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to attach an AI agent. So AI agent, and then instead of, it's not a chat, it's not be triggered from a chat. So then what we're going to do here is you can see we don't have a caption. We actually need to re-execute this. And trust me, it's okay that you see my Gemini API key. I'm going to delete this right after this, so it's okay. But what we're going to be doing now is we need a prompt to put in here based on whether we have a photo or caption or not to use them, or if we just have the text, then just use that as well based on the tools. So let's first do generated image because that's the easiest. Before we do that, let's add a chat model. So we're going to say OpenAI. You're going to just choose whatever model you want. I'm actually going to choose GPT-5, I think, for this. I think it just worked the best. So GPT-5. And now for the tool, we're going to say call n8n workflow tool. However, we haven't created a workflow tool yet. So what do we have to do? Well, let's create another workflow. So you can go ahead and save this, and then we're going to create another one. So open up this in a new tab. I'm going to now create a new workflow. Let's put it in here, in the workflow into personal. Okay, so what we need to do now, well, the trigger is going to be different. So this is going to be execute sub workflow. So when executed by another workflow. Okay, so when we're executed by another workflow, we want to do something. Okay, in this case, we want to basically generate an image. And when we do this, we need to pass in a field from the AI agent. So we're going to all we need for this one is the prompt. And we're going to pass that prompt in as a string. So the next node then is we need to search for Gemini. So this is Google Gemini, and we are going to generate an image. Okay, so here you're going to create, you're just going to come in here, add in the API key that we had just copied. So paste that in right here. Okay, so from this list, just go ahead and choose n8n. And for the prompt, what I'm going to say is we're saying json.prompt because I know that's the node that we just got it from. Or if for some reason we don't really necessarily want it to fail, we could do some things about this, right? But if the prompt doesn't, we could say if the prompt doesn't exist, just don't do anything, right? But for now, I just want you to see that it can create an image. Okay, so basically here what we're going to do is pass in the JSON prompt, and if it doesn't exist, just use this image of it banana skateboarding. Okay, so then once we do that, we actually need to upload this to Google Drive because we don't have a way to pass, at least I've been able to find out, because whenever we pass the base64 string, it's so long that when I tested this, the context window couldn't handle it. So what we're going to do just to combat that, right, we're going to upload a file to Google Drive, upload file, and you should already have a Google Drive account. Now in there, you can go ahead and just create a new name or a new folder, but for the file name, let's just make this do now.format like that. And let's say, we can say before this, nano banana underscore. And then let's also add the hour. Yep, that's right. And minute and seconds. Let's just go ahead and let's add that so we know it's always unique. Okay, so then the parent folder, how about images? I think I have something with Wave 3, so I'm just going to use that. Go ahead and go into Google Drive and create your own. That's perfectly fine. Now, I know at this point, you probably wouldn't know what this would actually output. So there are a couple ways that we could actually do this. We could either create this workflow as part of the main flow, then convert this to a sub workflow, or we can test this out now, and then we can see what the output is here, because we just got to send back a few fields. We don't want to send back all of the information that we have here. So first off, let's name this nano generate image. So this is the sub workflow. Now back here in the AI agent, we're going to add the tool. We can call an n8n workflow tool. In this instance, we're going to search for nano generate image. And then the prompt is what we're passing in here. So the prompt will be the text. So it already knows that is what it has to pass in for this tool to work. So let's go ahead and test this out now. We've got the main things going, so let's go ahead and save this. Let's go ahead and execute the workflow. It doesn't like that. We need the prompt. Silly me, we need the prompt. So you can just go ahead and copy this. I'll have this ready for you, but this is the basic prompt that we'll be using for all of this. So basically, if the photo ID isn't given, then create the image first from the text message if it exists. Okay, and then just goes forth on how to pass in other information when we get to the image editing. Okay, so now that we're ready, we're gonna execute the workflow, say generate an image of a knight fighting a martial artist. Okay, so this may not work, but we're going to find out right now. And if it doesn't work, this is just how it goes. If anything doesn't work, then we just debug it and understand why that didn't work. Okay, but we at least know that it's going into our workflow and it's trying to do something. If something failed, it would have failed like almost immediately. And a lot of times it's the file is what we pass in, but this is working. Okay, so it seems like it may have generated the image. We will see. We will check this out. Actually, we can go into the workflow, I believe. Let's go we're in our workflow, go to executions. You see we have a succeeded execution. So generate image, then we can actually view this from here. So from the output, you can actually view it. And here it is, a knight fighting a martial artist. Perfect. We don't want to look at all this information that when we get uploaded from Google Drive, look at all this information. We don't need all of this, right? We really need the ID, the name, and we don't really need the MIME type, but we're going to pass it in. So we just need these three things. So what we're going to do is go back to editor, open this up. Now, of course, this is the thing about sub workflows, doing it this way, but I kind of already know what I'm doing, so I know what we need. So I'm going to say set, and I'm going to put in ID. Whoops. I'm going to put in ID. This is json.id. And then we have name. This is json.name. Now, again, if you're wondering how I know this, well, first off, I've already done this. But secondly, it's just you can just write down the names or know what the names are from the output, how we just checked it. MIME type. Again, the MIME type is just if it's PNG, JPEG, whatever that may be. Okay, so we are good now. We can save this. And then what we haven't done yet, there's nowhere to save it or nowhere to send that back. We will get there. So the next thing we want to do, because it's a little bit more complicated, is the nano banana edit image. Okay, you've done a great job at this point, and there's been a lot to digest. And again, we just went over the generating image, so we're going to get directly into the editing image workflow. Is going to be, again, another sub workflow. But I actually already have it created, and I think what's going to be easier is either you can download it or you can import it. We can go over it, or I'm going to go a little slow or slow enough where you can pause it, where you can create them as we go. Okay, because this is a little bit more going on. I think it'd be easier if I explain everything that's a part of this. Okay, so what you need to do if you want to create this on your own is create another workflow. Okay, so whenever you get started with is executed by another workflow. That's the trigger that we're going to use. So when you open this up, we need 4 things this time in here. We need the caption, the photo, which is really just which is a string. And then we have the access token and the Gemini API key. Now, with the Gemini API key, you only have you don't really have that many uses on the free version. So in here, I switched my API key to be what I use for my billing account. I think I'm only tier 1. It's just because, you can use it for free, but you don't get that many. So you would have to create another account or something. Then what we do here, and I always like to do this. I always like to have a separate settings, and then I'm basically regurgitating or just resetting everything from in the trigger node, the sub workflow trigger node, but I just like to retrieve information from a settings node. Maybe it's just me. It's just what I prefer. Okay, so now we have an HTTP request node. Getting this photo from Telegram is a 2-parter. We need to actually retrieve the photo, and then we need to download it. So this is the API to retrieve the photo. So we need the access token and the photo, the photo ID, which will be passing in from the AI agent into this tool. And then we need to download the photo, which is another separate API request. So you'll basically just copy this, and then see we're getting the access token from the settings. The file path will be from the previous node where we got the photo ID. Then what we need to do is when we download the photo, we need to extract. That's going to download an actual file, a binary file. So we need to extract the base 64 string from that. Because Google Gemini, the HTTP request doesn't like a file, it takes in the JSON string or the base 64 string. So that means we're actually going to edit an image. So this is the URL that you need. It's kind of like a 3-parter. We need the model. This is to let us know that we want to generate content, and then this is my API key. Okay, so how I got that was you go back to Google Studio. You can go to Google Studio. I think I uploaded a photo. Okay, so how I got it was I just took a very flattering image of me. It looks like the top of my head's cropped off, which it is, and then generate bananas. And so what I did here, I have an image, have a prompt. Well, if you go at the top right, go to get code, you can actually retrieve everything. All of this information is all you need. It's actually, this isn't as easy, but you can import this curl command and then separately take this JSON. Actually isn't correct JSON for HTTP request node. It's not correct JSON. And then I've done it for you, so you don't have to worry about it. But that's where I got all this information from. Okay, so this is the full API, and then you'll be passing your API key. And then down here, this JSON.data, this is the actual base64 string that we're passing in that it's going to be able to deal with. And then the text, this is the caption from the Telegram, so it's kind of like the prompt for this. Then after that, we just retrieve the JSON string data. Okay, so we're going to get the huge JSON string data from that. It's a long string, and then we're going to convert that string data back into a file. We're going to upload that file to your Google Drive folder. So here, you just upload. You're uploading data. This is the name of the input data field. And then here is just the name of the file. This is a standard name with, this is year, month, day, hour, minute, second. So I know it's always unique. You can rename that however you would like. I just uploading to a folder that I have. And then I'm returning, instead of getting everything, all the data that is returned from uploading the drive, I just want the image ID that's in Google Drive, the name, and then the MIME type. This case would be image/PNG. So when that's done, we're going to come back here. Okay, so now we need to create the tool. Okay, so we're click the plus button, call n8n workflow tool, and from the sources database, from the list, we're going to search for nano editing tool, and now we have all four of the inputs from the tool that it's expecting. All right, so we're just gonna let AI decide on each of those, right? We're not gonna hard code those in. We're gonna let AI decide. You could if you really wanted to, but it's just best to do it this way. And then for a description for the actual tool is called, we can say that descriptions always help for the inputs and the actual description of the tool. Always helps. So we can say, call this when we want to edit an image. Okay, just so it knows exactly what we want. Okay, so now we have both these tools. Now we can just go ahead and test. So let's go execute this workflow. So okay, so here's just a quick photo I had, and I want to be, the caption is I want to be in a banana suit at a football game. Okay, great. So now it's starting the workflow. It should go directly to the nano editing tool. Yep, and then we know it's working so far anyways. If it's not working immediately, it's either the inputs are correct, the parameters, or you don't have enough requests in order to do that. And I'll show you how you can figure that out. Okay, so if we go back to the editing tool, in order to figure out any errors, you go to executions. You can see I have some. I definitely have some. So here in this one in particular, for the edit image, it's because the service is receiving too many requests from you. That's the problem. That is because that was using the free API key. Okay, so that's why I used it, because I need to show you guys, right? So I edited my API key. But now we are getting this data back, but we need to do something with it. Okay, so first off, our output right here. This is our output. It's kind of hard to see, I think, but it looks in here just like it's supposed to be kind of like JSON. I mean, here's the actual JSON, right? But this isn't like, we can't really do much with this the way it actually is right now. So we need to extract that. So I'm going to add another node, say set, and what you can do here, let me bring this back over, is we can add one field. There's one thing in here. We need a file name. Well, we need both of them, but file name. And then here, we're going to change this to expression. And how we retrieve that is, that's JSON. So we're going to say JSON dot output, because that's the name of the variable over here. Output's name of the variable, output, and then we can say parse JSON. So when it parses the JSON, now we can grab the individual property. So I can say dot, and see I can choose between file name or image. So I'm gonna say file name, and I'm gonna do the same thing for this one. So I'm gonna say image, which is really image ID, and then actually we can just copy this up here, paste this, and then instead of file name, we're gonna put image. Okay, we're gonna execute the step, and there we go. Now we actually have the file name and image ID. All right, so now the next thing we need to do is actually download the file from Google Drive. And we know what file to download because we have the image ID right here. So instead of from a list, we're going to say by ID, image ID, execute the step. I don't even know what it looks like yet. So we're going to see. Okay, there I am throwing peace signs. This is the second time it keeps throwing peace signs. Is this the Philadelphia Eagles of all teams? But sorry if you're an Eagles fan. But yeah, so it's banana suit at a football game. Okay, perfect. All right, so now we just want to send this back to Telegram. So I'm going to say Telegram, and I'm going to search for photo. So send a photo message, and we want to photo, which is then data. Now, just data is fine. That is the input name. However, we need to check mark the binary file because this is a binary file. It's not. We just need to do that. And then for the chat ID, we need to go back to Telegram trigger. And so Telegram trigger. Right here is the ID. So it's not the update ID. It's not the message ID. It's in the from message. It's the chat ID right there. Then if we execute this step, there we go. It worked, and I got the banana suit outfit. Okay, perfect. Okay, great job. So for our final, or this is the coup de grace project, kind of everything that you've learned so far is we're going to basically take the sub workflows, the AI agents, and then also how we created workflows as a tool for an AI agent. And recently, n8n came out with something a little bit better to kind of organize how the AI agents and all the tools involved. So it's really not great practice to have a single agent with a ton of tools, right? You really don't want that. And I remember reading a research paper where if you go after about 12, 13 tools, it may not necessarily always work, although I know that models are getting better. That was a little bit of an older research paper that I had read, but still, you're going to get better results if you have prompts for specific agents, and they do have their specific tools for their own concern, right? I mentioned separation of concerns. So here what I'm going to show you, this is what we're going to build, and we're going to go through a quick example, and then we're going to go through building this from scratch as our last project. So here we have an orchestrator agent, we have an Airtable, calendar, and email agent. So these are tools, separate tool agents, and whenever we send a prompt, I know I mentioned we're doing stuff with Telegram again. It's just the easiest way to, as a tutorial, it's one of the easier ways as a tutorial to show you how we can quickly send a text message or a voice message, have all of our agents do something, and then send that back to get confirmation, of what happened, right? So what we're going to be doing is building these separate agents, have the orchestrator agent, basically understanding what the prompt is and how it needs to delegate to all these other agents, and then it's going to perform, you're going to execute the tools and then send us back a message. So here, what I'm going to do is I have a Telegram message. I basically want to book a call, right? Let's do Wednesday, September 27th at 6 p.m. Eastern. I am going to send this. Let's execute this workflow. So it's going to be waiting for the text message coming in. It already got it. All right, so I have the orchestrator agent, and I do have some different, I have different chat models because you could combine them all into one. I have an orchestrator agent using like a more reason thinking model. And so then the other agents, I think I'm just using 4.1 mini or 4.51 mini. But what is going to happen now is the orchestrator agent is going to take all the information, decide which agents to use, and then the agents themselves, based on information, are going to execute those tools, okay? So sometimes with Airtable, it doesn't search properly because I'll show you that we're actually having AI come up with the formula for searching Airtable, but it'll go back and it'll rerun and work properly. Okay, so no need to worry about that. So what it's done now is it's gone through Airtable, which has a few tables of different information. So we can look at it real quick. So I have, let's go through this. So I have like deals that were made based on the contacts, our interactions with them. And these are any meetings that we are setting up or that we have had with those customers. Now, again, all this is like dummy data. And I'm going to show you how in Airtable you can use their new Omni, which will create all the tables for you and it'll create interfaces, without us having to do anything. It's using their newest AI model. Okay, it's really amazing. Okay, so here it's next going to the calendar agent. It's going to create the event. And as all this is happening also, right, you can come in here to the calendar event and you can kind of look. It's, created a tentative 45-minute intro with me September 24th at 12 p.m. Now it's going to the email agent. and then it may draft a message and then send a message, but it's going through step by step what it needs to do. It figured it out, it orchestrated everything together, and so now it's going to take all the information basically that's accumulated, organize that, and summarize it into a nice, concise text message to then be sent back to Telegram. Okay, and here is the message back. So we got the calendar invite, when it was, it found an Acme Inc. contact, and then here are the deals. Here are some of the deals that were made, and just information about the email that it was sent to and who we CC'd to be a part of the demo. And then here is the email that I had gotten that I had wrote to myself. Okay, great. We've got a little bit of work to do. Okay, we're going to go through each of these things. It may not take super long, but maybe it will. But we're going to do all of this together. The only thing I think that maybe you can copy paste are the prompts, which I'm sure you can actually improve. You could probably improve after working with this yourself, which I highly recommend you doing, is looking at the prompts and always trying to find a way to improve these prompts, especially for the agents. All right, so getting started with it, go ahead and create a new workflow. We need to add a Telegram trigger. So Telegram, we need to add the trigger on a message. Okay, so that's fine right there. And the first thing we're going to do though is, since if you need to look at it again, how to set up Telegram, again, I have the docs in a previous part of this course. We talk about that. But n8n has docs to set up your credentials. It only takes a couple minutes. But let's just go ahead and send a text message. So, hello, this is a test. And this way we can see exactly what Telegram is going to send. Okay, so after this, we see that we get a chat ID, and then we also get a date and text, and just some other information. Okay, so the next step is we want to basically see if that's a text message, because if we get a voice message, it's not going to be the same property as text here. We'll go and take a look at that also here in a second. So let's go ahead, and this is going to be, we're going to make a set node here. So we're going to drag and drop the text, but we're going to add something else. So we're going to say double quotes. So basically we're going to set the property. This is just going to be text. If it's a text message, use that. Otherwise, if it's not, just set this to empty. Then we can have an if statement. Now there are a couple ways we could do this. But now this if statement is going to say if the text, the comparison is string, is not empty. So if it's not empty, meaning this is true, or you could say, for instance, if it's empty, if the string is empty, we execute the step, that means, the output was false, meaning that it's not empty. Then here, we can go down that path. But now let's go ahead and send a voice message to see how that comes through the workflow. So let's go ahead and execute the workflow. I'm going to send a voice message. All right, and this is a test message. Okay, so here, instead, if we look at the trigger, see there's a voice, right? We don't have anything related to text. There's no text field here. So what happens is then in the set field, because that field didn't exist, we returned empty. Okay, so now we're checking if that text is empty, which you can see over here on the left. It is empty. So now we know this is a voice. Now what we need to do is basically convert that audio, transcribe it, and then send that back to text for the AI agent. So the next is we need to use Telegram. So Telegram, you want to get a file. All right, and then the file ID is going back to Telegram trigger right here. So voice, we're going to get the file ID. So we're going to execute the step, and this now gives us back an audio file. Now what we need to do is transcribe that. So we're just going to use OpenAI. This is probably always going to be a small one. So we want to transcribe the recording, bring in the data, make sure you just use your OpenAI account. So now if we execute the step, it shouldn't take long at all. This is a short one. Now we get the text is, all right, this is a test message. Okay, great. So now what we can do is from here, we can now bring this into the AI agent. And so we're going to create AI agent. We're going to choose define below. We're not coming from a chat, like a standard chat, but we're going to bring this in, right? So also, if you noticed that back here, this was text, right? So that means that all we have to do from this if statement, we're going to resend the text message, but the output of the transcribe, it has a text property. We need to make sure that from the actual Telegram, if it's just text or if it's audio, we give the same property name to the AI agent. So let's go ahead and execute the workflow again. Oh, it doesn't like that. That's not working. So just disconnect the AI agent because we haven't actually set that up yet. This is another test. Okay. So here, if you're saying this is outputting this is actually outputting the text property, which is the same. So we're good here. So we can now connect both of these. Like you said, you could do this a couple different ways, right? There's not just one way to do this. Or if you don't want to worry about audio, then don't, right? You absolutely don't have to. But now we're set up for our AI agent to receive anything. So the first thing we need to set up with our AI agent is a chat model. So I'm just going to give OpenAI, of course, again, you can use whichever one you want to. So we can start out with 4.1 mini. You can change this to anything that you would like. And so now this is actually good to go, but it doesn't do anything. Now we have the prompt, and you could also add a system message saying you are an orchestrator agent. And then we also want to, up at the top here, we can change the name of it so we know exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and first create our email agent. So how to do that is under Tools, you can click the plus button. We're going to search for AI agent. This is going to give you an AI agent tool. So we're going to click that. And what you can see this does is this gives us another AI agent tool. So let's go ahead, and you can also right-click, rename this, and just put in email agent. That's exactly what this is going to be. So first off, in order to make this work, let me zoom out a little bit. By the way, for Mac, it's Command and then mouse scroll. So we're going to first give it a chat model. So again, I'm just going to open AI. This one can also just be 4.1 mini. But I'm just separating these so you can go in and you can give separate models. Like you really kind of maybe want some more reasoning or thinking models for the orchestrator agent. So you can update them. Whatever you'd like to do, right? I'm just giving you the options. So then for the tool, this is where we're actually going to add the Gmail tools. So you're going to click the plus tool, search for Gmail, and then click get the right account. I'm going to use 2. So the first one is I want to have a send operation. Okay, so I'm basically going to let the model define. You could always send it to somebody specific, but I'm going to let the model define that, right? Define, and then for the subject and the message. So this just means really that the prompting kind of needs to be a little bit on point. We need to make sure that we're doing it properly so that it knows that when it gets something from the agent that it's going to be able to update, there's going to actually be give correct values to these properties. Let's go ahead and rename this to send message. Okay. So now we have a tool, we have an email agent, and we have an orchestrator agent. Now the problem is we don't have prompts for either of these. So at this point, what you could really do is, and what I typically start out with is ask ChatGPT, this is everything I'm doing. Can you give me a prompt for an agent that has access to these tools? So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give the prompts that I used originally. I highly recommend you don't ever just take somebody's prompts as they are and you expect them to work, right? I'm going to show you that they work, but anything can always be improved, right? Everything can always be improved. So that's where, once you kind of understand something a little bit more, figure out how to improve it. So for the orchestrator agent, I'm going to go ahead and drop this down, choose expression. Actually, when you choose expression, it gives you this little button right here, so you can open up another tab. So I'm going to paste in what I had. So this is kind of a little bit more of the end result, and you can kind of see now what's going to be what we need here. So for the expression JSON.text, this is the prompt coming in from Telegram, and you always want to put the time is and then put the actual time as it is right now, so that whenever it goes to update your calendar, it's not going to update it to what the last model's date that it understands is. It doesn't understand. It's not going to look for your system time. It's not going to look for wherever this is, whatever server this is on. It's not going to look for that time zone or anything. You need to give it the time that it is now so that it can work properly. And then just to kind of show you for the email agent, I'm just going to, you could probably come up with something better, but I just want to show you how you can also just come up with your own prompts, simply talking to ChatGPT or whatever model that you want to work with, right? It doesn't matter. But I'm just going to pass in this prompt to the AI agent. Okay. So it's going to give you more than what you maybe need, because I do notice that sometimes it'll say, it's going to give you some more things that you need, so more than what you probably really need. But let's just go ahead and just highlight some of this. We don't need all of that, I don't think. So the problem with this prompt is it probably works. We'll test it. We're going to test it here in a second. But it doesn't have the input from the orchestrator agent, right? We just are giving it a prompt, but it doesn't have any input to do something with. So what you actually have to use is from AI, get the prompt user message as a string, and this is going to populate this from whatever is passed from the previous agent. Okay, so we will test this. We'll go ahead and test this now. So what I'm going to do in my Telegram, I'm going to open it up. Well, I'm going to first choose Execute Workflow and say, can you send an email to tylerreedyoutubelearning@gmail.com about how LLMs simply work. Okay, so now the orchestrator agent, it already decided that we only need to do something with the email agent. So the email agent is going to end up calling the send message tool with all the information. Once it's done, it's going to send it back to the orchestrator agent, and then we're going to send that as a message to, or well, we haven't done that yet, but it's going to send that as a message back to Telegram, and it should have already sent us a message. So first off, let's just finish off this part of the workflow. So let's go click the plus button after the orchestrator agent. We're going to send it. We want to send this back to Telegram. So send a message, send a text message, and the output, we're just going to put that in the text box right here. And then we can say Telegram trigger. We want to get the chat ID, put that right here, and then execute this step. So now I should have gotten it. Here is my message that's saying that it explains simply and has been sent to tylerreed@gmail.com. So let's go check that out. So here it is. Here is a basic email, just kind of explaining how LLMs work. The idea was that we just wanted to make sure that this tool worked. And great job it has. So let's go ahead and add some more tools to the email agent. So we're going to go to tool, type in Gmail, and then instead of send, we maybe want to get many. Maybe we just want to always limit it to 50. You can change this number, or you can have AI decide, right? If you bring something in, it can decide for you if you want. So we're going to create that tool, and then let's go ahead and also we can create a Gmail. We can make this a draft. So the resource is a draft. To create a draft, we can let that be defined. That should be a text, or actually we want the email type to be HTML. So we have that tool, and let's say we wanted another tool. We could also say instead of sending, maybe we wanted to add a label to something, right? So we can get the message. We can have it get the message ID for us. So let's go ahead and go back here, and then we can just go ahead and use this. And what should happen is it should be able to retrieve anything that we need to be able to populate these. So it might have to execute another tool to make that tool work. And then we're also going to add the get many labels in case it does need to understand what labels we currently have. So if I need to come back here, switch my account. I think we are about good to go. Make sure you have the correct credentials tied to your Gmail. So now that I just added these, right? So all I'm going to do is execute this workflow again. I'm probably going to copy this and add the appropriate labels, please. Okay, so now we're going to have this. We're going to see if this works, right? So we're going to have the orchestrator agent. It's already working. The email agent did not like something, so it's probably going to try again. It is possible that it fails, right? So we're going to run this again. And I'm going to show you what I forgot that we need to update, right? Errors happen, right? So we got an error. I just quickly cut. I'm going to show you what happened. Okay, so what I did was, because there was an error, what I realized was that it tried to add a label to Gmail that didn't work, right? So here, we added a create a label whenever we went to add the label in Gmail. I know it's just showing the first run, but the second run was successful, right? Because it didn't realize that the one it used didn't exist. So I already ran this once. It already had created the label that it needed. And so what happened was it was trying to create an info request label. But if we come up here, now it added it to the AI tools label this time. And so this is great, right? It's fine that we had an error. Now we just learned how to fix it. So now we have all of these tools just for the email agent. Now we're going to go ahead and start with the calendar agent. It's going to be almost done the exact same way. So we're going to look for calendar, Google Calendar tool. Or I'm sorry, we're doing that wrong. We need to add the AI agent tool first. Okay, so then we're going to come down here, you can bring this, you can kind of bring this over. We can worry about how it looks later. We're going to add the OpenAI chat model. Okay, you should be really good at that. Now for the tool, now we can start putting in the calendar tool. For the calendar is you could have AI actually do something with that, but I basically am just going to always want to be to my calendar. But you could, do something different with that if you would like. So we're going to bring this over. And now another tool we want, that's just to create an event. Now we want to be able to get events because you never know, we might need to check if something already exists, then we want to ask the user, hey, what other options would you like? This already exists for that time. So we're just going to keep adding some tools. I'm going to choose my calendar. So we have create, get many. We also probably want to be able to update, and we will have AI determine the ID because we'll have it get the many events to see which one we have already to get that ID. Okay. So now the next thing we need the prompt user message. And you'll have this to copy, right? But this is just one that ChatGPT basically helped me come up with. Again, I always make sure I always put the time is in the current time on almost everything, so it ensures that it's going to be working properly. Okay, so now as you can see, right? This isn't super difficult. You add the AI agent tool, then you just start adding the tools to there. Just make sure that your credentials work properly. Okay, so we're going to execute the workflow. Except this time I'm going to say, can you add an event about teaching LLMs to my calendar for, let's say, 5 to 7 p.m. tomorrow, starting tomorrow. Yeah, just do that tomorrow. Okay, so now it's going to come in here to the orchestrator agent. It's going to decide, hey, now we need to worry about the calendar tool. So it's come back in here. It's going to create the event in Google Calendar. And then it should be done. It's going to send it back to the orchestrator agent and then send that back to me in a text message. So here it said event has been successfully scheduled. There were no conflicts. Let's go check it out. So today's the 21st. Here is the new title. That's at 5 p.m. Okay, great. The new event at 5 p.m. So great, that worked. Now, what you could do from here is you could add, if you want to, keep adding more agents, right? That's actually what I just want to show you a little bit more advanced is one with Airtable. Okay, so let's go ahead and create another tool, and we're going to search for AI agent again. We are going to come out of this, move this over here. We're going to go ahead and rename this Airtable agent. Now, before we really move forward, Airtable is basically an AI online database. That's exactly what it is, right? So if you haven't done anything with Airtable before, I'm about to go over a very brief introductory about Airtable. So go to airtable.com if you haven't yet, or if you sign up. Basically, if you haven't yet, or sign in if you already have an account. And we're going to start this from scratch, okay? So you'll see a screen like this. Basically, you have workspaces, and in those workspaces, you'll create a database. You can create multiple databases, and then you can create tables within those databases. Okay, so right here, I'm going to go ahead and actually, this is one I'd already created. We're going to delete that. So go on the left-hand side of workspaces, create a new workspace. We'll call this CRM. Now in here, we're going to create an app. Okay, this is basically a database, and then it creates tables within this database. So you can build an app with Omni or build an app on your own. Choose build an app with Omni. And you have this, basically what I'm doing is I'm just copy pasting 4 tables with all the columns all the columns and the column types and everything. You can do this. You'll be able to just paste this in. You can actually import a spreadsheet with data that you already have. Put this in Airtable. But what we're going to do is we're going to just say build it. It's going to basically, I'll just speak while it's doing this, right? Because this is going to happen like while I'm talking. It's going to first off, so contacts. This is the first table, and I have a bunch of columns. So that's what's creating right now. And because this is AI generated, it also is going to create AI agents with other columns that are based on some of these columns, right? So like where they're at, some notes about them. It just adds in sample data, right? That's all it's doing right now. And so here it's generating contact summary, a contact category, so it can automatically add categories to each contact. And so here's the next one, deals. We had the deal name all the way up to the last email. So it's also going to link to other tables from this table, right? So it's going to do that automatically. And so here it's creating like some other columns that it thinks we may need. So then we have the interactions and the meetings table. So it's done all of this for us. And so what this means, typically when you retrieve data to be used, you're going to, the data is going to exist somewhere, or we're going to be constantly bringing in new data. And so a lot of times that's a database. So that's what we are kind of replicating here. So now what you also have are interfaces. So you have data, automations, interfaces, and forms. Data is your actual table, columns, and information. Interfaces, you can have different ones where, like right here is a contact list. This probably doesn't have all of the information about the contact. It just has some information. So you don't have to, actually, if you can close that, you don't have to see everything. You can see more of a condensed version of specific information. So engagement, right, here's an interaction log. Here's a meeting calendar. Right, so here's an actual calendar. I can click on this. This will tell me who the attendees were, links to the meetings and all of that information. Here's the meeting timeline. Actually, we don't have that view. I don't have it because I don't not in that plan, but that has an actual timeline. Let's go to pipeline here. Oh, here's like a Kanban version of like what we need to do next. So you can go through who, here we had won a deal. Here's the actual deal list. Again, it's not all of the information from the database. It's just enough to what you maybe need. Okay, so now going back, actually, you know what? I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. Before we can do anything with Airtable, we need an access token so that n8n can access this, well, right now, the contact CRM database. So at the bottom left, go to your account, go to Builder Hub. You're going to the top right, choose Create a Token, and then you're going to type in, for the name, you can just say like Contact CRM n8n. Okay, then you need to go to Scopes. You always need data records read and write, and then you need schema bases read. And then to add a base, we just named, this is called, I think it's just called CRM. So yeah, there's CRM. So all current and future bases in this workspace. So create token. Now I'm going to copy this. Right, so this ID is not like the full access token. Although I'm going to delete this anyways. But so for the Airtable agent, go ahead and create or add a chat model. And then for the tool, we're going to search for Airtable. We want to get a record, but we need to create a credential with that access token. Just paste it in right here, click save, and then I'm going to actually rename this CRM n8n. I'm going to rename it something. You rename it whatever you want, but this is just so you can identify the token that you're using. Okay, so I'm using credential CRM n8n. That means it only has access to that specific workspace. And so from the list, I'm going to choose Contact CRM. And then table, I'm going to let it define, especially for the record ID, I'm going to let it define that too. So then we also want to have another Airtable tool. This one is going to be the resources record. The operation is going to be search. The base, again, this is going to be Contact CRM. We want to let it choose, and also want to let it choose or it create the formula. The formulas are a little tricky, so it's just best off to let AI deal with that. Okay, of course you can do more things with that, but we also want to be able to update a record. So again, another Airtable tool. The operation is going to be update. From the list, we want to choose Contact CRM. From the table, let it decide. And then for the typecast, let that typecast. Update all matches. No, I think that should be good. Okay. Now what we need to do is basically get the prompt for this Airtable agent. So you'll have all this, like I said, right? Just make sure that the input is from the previous interaction, or from the previous model, which would be the orchestrator model. All right. So what we're going to do is save this. Now we're going to execute the workflow, and we're going to give something. Now we're going to test this with something that's a little bit more complicated, a little bit more in depth. It should hit at least all of these agents. Okay. So how about in 3 days at 3 p.m. at, let's say 9 a.m. Let's see. And then let's go to our contacts here on Airtable. Let's go back. Let's go back to the contacts CRM, contacts table, and let's see the company these work for. How about we make 3 of these people work for CityBuild Inc. Okay, so the reason I'm doing that is because I want to get the contacts from CityBuild Inc. and get all the deals with them. This will be sent to me. Okay. Great. Okay, so now during the test, the first thing it always should do is go to Airtable. It should try to retrieve all the information it needs. Then once it has that information, it should try to pass that off to the calendar and the email as it is right now, right? So it's creating the event. It might be updating because it's adding the attendees. We will check all of this, and the email one errored out. So we're going to see why that errored out. So first off, the calendar event. So it created a 45-minute meeting with some descriptions. Okay, so let's check this out. So it created at 3 days. Okay, so it starts 9:24. So let's go ahead and check this out. So 9:24 at 9 a.m. right? Okay, so I'm going to show you what I think just happened with this calendar agent. So especially with the create an event. So it said, I passed a description and other things here. But the problem is, in the actual create an event, it doesn't have any way to do that. So we need to add a field. Okay, we need to add a description. Let AI decide what that is. We also need to add we can add the summary. We can add the ID. We can let AI generate that. We can add there's a lot of things that we can add to this. Can guest modify color and name ID. Actually, so we probably don't worry about that. All right. So then for the email agent, this is saying why. So why didn't this didn't like something? It didn't like what we were passing in. It did not like what we were passing in at all. The prompt: send an email. You read a short. Okay. So this is kind of the prompt that's happening. I think I see. So in this email, so the subject, the HTML, the user inputs you should receive. So these are the inputs they should receive immediately with correct information. That's for sending the email. Let's check the orchestrator agent. Let's see, when it goes to send an email, see two others. Sorry, I'm just kind of going through this, seeing what I need to fix really quick. If you get emails or when sending an email, it's okay to give more than needed. Ensure HTML is formatted well, please. Okay, so basically what happened was it didn't like when it tried to go to send a message, it didn't like the information that it was passing to, that it was going to pass to pass here. So I think we should be okay. We do not want to do that. All right, so let's save this. Let's execute the workflow again, and this time we are going to send the same thing just for a different time. How about we do it 5 days from now at 9 a.m. Okay, so we're going to test this again. It's going to retrieve all the information from Airtable again, as it should. So once it does that, then it's probably going to try and create the calendar events. And then it should create the email events. Now, while this is happening, you hear different things online like, oh, prompting doesn't matter. Prompting does. These are AI agents. They should be able to do everything on their own. But still, at some level, they still need to, yes, they can decide on their own what to do, but they still need to be able to know where to get certain information to be able to then perform those actions, right? It's okay if we help them. Okay, so now So it went ahead and tried to get the events to make sure there's nothing conflicting. It created the event. We got messages, we got the labels, and now we are trying to send an email message, which it did, right? It's, sometimes it does fail, but it will retry, right? So here, what it's doing is the orchestrator agent is working. It's able to perform all of those actions. I know this is showing a red X. That's because of the first try. That's okay. So if we actually go to our email, the reason it failed was because this email address that I'm using doesn't work. This guy from CityBuild is fictional. That's why it didn't work. But it's just telling, hey, you're invited to this. Please prepare any relevant documents. Looking forward to our meeting. Okay, so if we go to Google Calendar, what did I say when it was? I kind of forget. I think maybe here we did it right. If we go back here, the create calendar event start on the 26th. Yeah, so the 26th goes to the 21st. We actually, I did this twice, right? But as you can see now, when I added the description, it's now showing the description for the calendar event. And I know that we ran into a couple of errors. That's okay. That's part of the process, right? I basically did this live with you guys, right? It's part of the process. It's going to happen. That's natural to get these errors. You just figure out what it is, and then you try to fix it. So a lot of times when you see a red X, especially here, you can, if it tells you, I realized that down here I had the ID. We couldn't do that. We couldn't let AI figure it out because it couldn't retrieve the ID for the meeting because it didn't exist yet, right? So there was no way that was going to work. And for the email agent, part of this is the receive tool did not get the expected schema. So you can typically come through here and see what the problem was. So here's 2 in the subject and the message. So I think those are probably okay. I think it I think it more have had to do with, I think this is okay, 2 subject message. Yeah, that's fine. But it didn't like the message, there was an output there. It didn't like something about one of these here. I think it might have been one of the inputs for the many messages or the labels. I think that's what the problem was. But, the debugging is part of the problem. And that's what we do. Okay, great. So this is a great exercise. This is something that you can use this as a base and implement more to this, right? Optimize it, do better, right? I did this live. I just kind of copy pasted some prompts. This could obviously be improved. A lot of this is learning how to make this happen, right? And why this is better. So this is better because of the separation of concerns. Having agents that do specific things is always better. Okay, so great job with all of this. I really appreciate you sticking around. Again, in my community, in my free community, you're gonna have some things to get you started. I do have a couple pretty in-depth workflows in there that will greatly benefit you, especially if you're a content generator, or if you're into content generating. And then in my paid community, I have a weekly session where I build something, or I build something for somebody, or I fix something. It depends on what it is, but you'll get more access to me, and I'm rebuilding that based off of no code and low code, and having some really customized automations, and show you how I actually build things for like product owners or for clients, and what I've actually built and what I have hosted right now in AWS for some of my clients, right? So I've been 7 years now. I'm a software engineer. I work for IBM and also work for Chase, so I'm a backend engineer. So I've built a lot of things that in those instances, they pay a lot, product owners will pay a lot of money for things, right? And so I've been a part of those teams where we actually deliver. And a lot of times when you're building stuff for clients, they aren't technical. Sometimes you might get somebody that is, but a lot of times they're not technical. And so whenever you're building something like this, right, you need to decide where's their data coming in from, how can I integrate that into a system, and then how do I send that or update something in their system as the output, right? So I'll help you decide, I'll help you figure that out in my paid community. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate everybody. Thank you. Just please leave me comments, anything you have, down in the comment section below. I want to hear your thoughts about this course. I'm going to have a much bigger course coming out soon, probably in another month or so, but it's going to encapsulate way more information. I'm going to have more how to actually build things for clients. Okay, so thank you for watching. Here are some more videos. I have everything in the description below for you to join my school community. Thank you again. I appreciate you. I'll see you next one.